James Griffin stares at the colossal Hirogen female looming over him, her iridescent skin gleaming in the cathedral-like chamber. Earth's fate hangs in the balance as he contemplates the alien's proposal. Mate with her, in public, or doom humanity to extinction. The day had begun like any other for the 28-year-old diplomat. Then a 10-kilometer-long spacecraft materialized in Earth's orbit, plunging the world into chaos. The United Nations Space Command, scrambling for a response, summoned James to their New York headquarters. "You're our only hope," the UNSC commander had said, his face ashen. "The Hirogen demand a human representative for their breeding program. If we refuse, they'll destroy Earth." Now aboard the alien vessel, James faces Opal, the Hirogen's chief xenobiologist. At 3.5 meters tall, she towers over him, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with an otherworldly glow. "Our species faces extinction," Opal explains, her voice resonating through the vast chamber. "We require human DNA to ensure our survival. We must mate immediately to test compatibility." James swallows hard, his mind racing. "Perhaps we could retire to my quarters?" Opal's multifaceted eyes blink in what might be amusement. "Hirogen custom dictates all important events occur in public spaces." She leads him to his assigned room, demonstrating how her massive frame dwarfs the standard human bed. "You see, it is impractical. We must proceed here in the Grand Chamber." As other Hirogen gather to witness the event, James realizes the full weight of his responsibility. He must successfully mate with Opal, navigating complex cultural and physiological differences, all while under the scrutiny of an alien audience. The fate of Earth rests on his performance. James takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the task ahead. He's humanity's representative, Earth's last line of defense against annihilation. As Opal begins to disrobe, her alien form both terrifying and mesmerizing, James pushes aside his fear and embarrassment. He steps forward, ready to do whatever it takes to save his planet. The assembled Hirogen watch with clinical interest as James and Opal prepare to bridge the gap between their species. In this moment, the future of two civilizations hangs in the balance, dependent on the unlikely union of a human diplomat and a towering alien xenobiologist. James steps forward, his heart pounding in his chest as Opal begins to disrobe. The alien's iridescent skin shimmers in the chamber's ethereal light, captivating and terrifying all at once. As he approaches, Opal raises a hand, her multifaceted eyes fixed on him with scientific curiosity. "Before we proceed, human James, there are aspects of Hirogen physiology you must understand," Opal says, her voice reverberating through the cavernous space. James nods, trying to maintain his composure as the gravity of the situation weighs upon him. Opal continues, "Our females possess specialized pheromone glands capable of inducing arousal in compatible species. This will facilitate our mating." Without warning, Opal's skin begins to emit a faint, shimmering mist. The cloud of particles envelops James, and he inhales sharply. Almost immediately, he feels the effects coursing through his body. His heart rate skyrockets, pupils dilating as a surge of adrenaline and desire floods his system. Opal observes James' reaction closely, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with increased intensity. "Your response is promising," she notes, reaching for a small device on her hip. "Now, we must assess our genetic compatibility." The handheld scanner hums to life as Opal passes it over James's body. A holographic display materializes between them, showcasing a complex array of data, human and Hirogen DNA intertwining in a dizzying dance of possibilities. As Opal studies the results, James becomes acutely aware of the growing audience. More Hirogen file into the chamber, their massive forms filling the space with an air of anticipation. Among them, a particularly imposing figure catches James's eye. "Zircon, our ship's commander," Opal explains, noticing James's gaze. "His presence signifies the importance of this union to our people." The weight of responsibility settles on James's shoulders once more. He glances up at Opal's towering form, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "I'm not sure how we'll physically manage this," he admits quietly. Opal's eyes glimmer with what might be amusement. Fear not, human James. We have technology to address such concerns. With a gesture, she activates a field around them. James feels a sudden shift, as if gravity itself has been altered. Opal's form seems to shrink, not in actual size but in its relation to him. This gravitational manipulation will allow for more compatible interaction, Opal explains. With the preliminaries complete, Opal initiates the mating ritual. She guides James through a series of movements, their bodies moving in sync as if performing an otherworldly dance. James feels energy coursing through him, amplified by the lingering effects of Opal's pheromones. As they move, Opal's bioluminescent patterns begin to shift and swirl, creating mesmerizing displays across her skin. The visual spectacle, combined with the alien's unique scent, overwhelms James's senses, driving all thoughts of embarrassment from his mind. The actual mating begins, a union of human and Hirogen physiology that defies James's wildest imagination. Opal's alien form introduces sensations he's never experienced, each touch sending electric pulses through his body. Throughout the act, her pheromone production continues, keeping James in a state of heightened arousal and ensuring his full participation in the ritual. A low, rhythmic chant begins to fill the chamber. The assembled Hirogen, led by Zircon, add their voices to the alien symphony. The sound vibrates through James's body, synchronizing with the pulsing patterns on Opal's skin and the beating of his own heart. As the mating reaches its climax, James finds himself lost in a sea of sensation. Opal's bioluminescence reaches a fever pitch, bathing the entire chamber in a dazzling aurora of alien light. The chanting grows louder, the energy in the room palpable, as both participants experience intense physical reactions. In the aftermath, silence falls over the chamber. James, panting and disoriented, watches as Opal once again produces her scanning device. She runs it over her own body, then his, her expression unreadable as she analyzes the data. The assembled Hirogen wait with suspenseful pause, all eyes on Opal. James feels the weight of Earth's fate pressing down on him as he awaits the verdict. Opal's multifaceted eyes meet his, and she prepares to speak, her words holding the power to determine the future of two species. Opal's multifaceted eyes locked onto James, her alien features unreadable as she processed the data from her scanning device. The chamber fell silent, the assembled Hirogen waiting with anxious anticipation. James felt his heart pounding, the fate of Earth hanging on Opal's next words. The initial mating attempt was successful, Opal announced, her voice echoing through the cavernous space. A ripple of excitement passed through the Hirogen audience, but James sensed a note of hesitation in Opal's tone. However, she continued, confirming his suspicions, it is not sufficient for our needs. The genetic compatibility between our species is promising, but to achieve the diversity required for our survival, we will need multiple mating sessions with various human partners. James exhaled slowly, relief and anxiety warring within him. They had passed the first hurdle, but a greater challenge lay ahead. Commander Zircon stepped forward, his massive form radiating authority. Earth must provide a diverse group of human males for further mating attempt, he declared, his voice leaving no room for argument. You have 48 Earth hours to return to your planet and gather a group of 20 suitable candidates. Failure to comply will result in orbital bombardment of your major cities. James swallowed hard, nodding his understanding. As he was escorted back to his shuttle, his mind raced with the implications of this new demand. How would Earth respond? Who would volunteer for such a mission? During the journey back to his home planet, James received a transmission from UNSC headquarters. The holographic image of Admiral Zhao appeared before him, her expression grave. Griffin, we've been monitoring the situation, she said without preamble. We've already begun the process of selecting potential candidates. However, we have concerns about the ethical implications and potential dangers of sending more humans to the Hirogen ship. James ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion setting in as the adrenaline began to wear off. I understand, Admiral, but we don't have much choice. The alternative is global destruction. Upon landing, James was immediately whisked away to a secure facility. There he met Dr. Elena Volkov, a striking woman with piercing green eyes and an air of intense focus. "Mr. Griffin," she greeted him, extending her hand. "I'm the lead geneticist assigned to this project. We've identified 50 genetically diverse males who might be suitable for the Hirogen's requirements. But we need your first-hand experience to help narrow down the selection and prepare the candidates for what they'll face." Over the next 24 hours, James worked tirelessly alongside Dr. Volkov and her team. They conducted a flurry of interviews, physical examinations, and psychological evaluations. James found himself recounting his experience with Opal in excruciating detail, helping the scientists develop a crash course in alien biology and cultural practices. "The pheromones are unlike anything I've ever encountered," James explained to a group of wide-eyed candidates. "They'll overwhelm your senses, but you need to stay focused on the task at hand." As the deadline approached, James and Dr. Volkov finalized the list of 20 candidates. The chosen men represented a wide array of genetic backgrounds, ranging in age from 22 to 45. Among them were Olympic athletes, renowned scientists, decorated soldiers, and civilians from various corners of the globe. James addressed the group, his voice somber. "Gentlemen, I won't sugarcoat this. What you're about to undertake is unprecedented and potentially dangerous. But the fate of our species depends on your success." With only hours to spare, James led the volunteers back to the shuttle. As they prepared for liftoff, a message came through from Mission Control. The Hirogen ship had moved closer to Earth's atmosphere, a clear threat should they fail to deliver. The shuttle departed Earth, carrying James, the 20 volunteers, and a small team of human scientists led by Dr. Volkov. As they approached the massive Hirogen vessel, James moved through the cabin, offering last-minute advice and encouragement. "Remember your training," he said, meeting each man's eyes in turn. "Stay calm, be respectful of their customs, and don't let their size intimidate you." As the shuttle docked with the Hirogen ship, James saw the volunteers' eyes widen in awe. Opal stood waiting with a group of Hirogen females, their towering forms and iridescent skin captivating the human men despite their preparation. Opal stepped forward, her multifaceted eyes scanning the group. "Welcome, humans. You will be divided among several mating chambers where you will participate in rituals designed to maximize genetic transfer and compatibility." James, recognizing the need for continued diplomacy, stepped forward. "Opal, I volunteer to undergo another mating session with you to further strengthen our alliance." Opal's skin pulsed with bioluminescence, perhaps indicating approval. "Very well, James Griffin. Your dedication to this endeavor is noted." As the group was led deeper into the ship, James caught Dr. Volkov's eye. The scientist nodded, her expression a mix of fascination and concern. They both knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of two species. The Hirogen females began to pair off with the human volunteers, leading them to separate chambers. James watched as the men disappeared one by one, their faces a mix of commitment and trepidation. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. Opal placed a massive hand on James's shoulder, guiding him towards their designated chamber. "Come, James Griffin, let us continue our work in ensuring the survival of both our peoples." As the chamber door closed behind them, James knew that this was just the beginning of a long and unprecedented journey. The true test of humanity's adaptability and resilience was about to unfold. Begin. The true test of humanity's adaptability and resilience was about to unfold in ways James could never have anticipated. As James and Opal entered their designated chamber, the air shimmered with a faint, iridescent mist. The Hirogen females' bioluminescent patterns pulsed with increased intensity, casting an otherworldly glow throughout the space. James felt the familiar rush of Opal's pheromones enveloping him, his senses heightening as his body responded to the alien stimulus. "This session will serve as a model for the others," Opal explained, her multifaceted eyes fixed on James. "We must demonstrate the full potential of our union." As they began the intricate mating ritual, James became acutely aware of the energy coursing through his body. Each movement, each touch seemed more intense than before, as if his very cells were awakening to new possibilities. In the nearby observation room, Dr. Elena Volkov's eyes darted between holographic displays, her brow furrowed in concentration. The data streaming from the various mating chambers painted an unexpected picture. "This can't be right," she muttered, fingers flying over the control panel. "The pheromone levels are off the charts." A junior scientist leaned in, eyes wide. "Doctor, look at the human vitals. Their hormone production is unlike anything we've seen before." Volkov nodded, her expression a mix of concern and fascination. "It's not just the quantity, it's the quality. These neurotransmitter readings. It's as if their brains are rewiring themselves in real time." Back in the central chamber, James and Opal's union reached a fever pitch. The Hirogen's skin rippled with waves of bioluminescence, creating patterns James had never seen before. He felt a surge of energy unlike anything he'd experienced in their previous encounter. As the mating ritual concluded, Opal quickly produced her scanning device. Her eyes widened as she analyzed the results. "Extraordinary," she breathed. "Our genetic material, it's integrating at an unprecedented rate." Before James could fully process this information, a commotion outside the chamber caught their attention. Commander Zircon's imposing figure filled the doorway, his expression intense. "The compatibility rates exceed all projections," Zircon announced. "We must accelerate the program immediately. Each human male will participate in multiple sessions with different females." James felt a twinge of concern. "Is that safe? We haven't had time to study the long-term effects of—" Zircon cut him off with a gesture. "Time is a luxury we cannot afford. The future of our species hangs in the balance." As James was ushered out of the chamber, he caught sight of the other human volunteers. Their faces showed a mix of exhilaration and disorientation, eyes bright with an almost feverish intensity. James realized he must look much the same. Dr. Volkov intercepted him in the corridor, her face pale. "James, we're seeing some unexpected developments. The volunteers are exhibiting physical changes, increased stamina, accelerated healing, enhanced senses. It's as if the Hirogen biology is unlocking something within human DNA." Before James could respond, a low rumble reverberated through the ship. The corridor illuminated with a brilliant flash of light, and a booming voice echoed through the vessel's communication system. "Attention all personnel, this is Supreme Matriarch Amethyst. I have arrived to personally oversee this critical program. All key participants report to the main assembly chamber immediately." James and Dr. Volkov exchanged worried glances. The arrival of the Hirogen's highest authority signaled a new phase in this interspecies encounter, one that would undoubtedly bring fresh challenges and unforeseen consequences. As they made their way to the assembly chamber, James couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in his own body. His senses seemed sharper, his movements more fluid. He wondered what other transformations awaited him and his fellow volunteers as they continued down this uncharted path of human Hirogen integration. The doors to the assembly chamber loomed before them, the fate of two species hanging in the balance. James took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever revelations or demands awaited on the other side. As the massive doors began to slide open, he stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face the next chapter in this unprecedented cosmic adventure. The massive doors slid open, revealing a vast chamber unlike anything James had ever seen. Towering crystalline structures pulsed with energy, casting an ethereal glow throughout the space. At the center stood Supreme Matriarch Amethyst, her imposing 4-meter frame dwarfing even the tallest Hirogen present. James felt a wave of awe wash over him as he took in the matriarch's appearance. Her iridescent skin bore intricate, shimmering patterns that seemed to dance with every movement. Her multifaceted eyes, each the size of a human fist, swept across the assembled group. "Welcome, humans and Hirogen." Amethyst's voice resonated through the chamber, a deep, melodious tone that sent vibrations through James's chest. "We stand at the precipice of a new era for both our species." As James and Dr. Volkov approached, flanked by Commander Zircon and Opal, Amethyst's gaze fixed upon them. "James Griffin," she intoned, "your genetic contribution has yielded unexpected results. We must delve deeper into this phenomenon." Before James could respond, Amethyst turned to a nearby console. With a gesture, she brought up a holographic display of intertwining DNA strands. "Behold," she announced, "the key to our salvation." Dr. Volkov stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her initial trepidation. "This is remarkable," she breathed, studying the display. "It appears that the human DNA has activated a dormant sequence in the hydrogen genome." Amethyst nodded, her skin pulsing with excitement. "Precisely. This sequence, long thought to be non-functional, may hold the solution to our genetic bottleneck." James listened intently, trying to grasp the implications. He noticed Opal's reaction, her usual composure slipping as she examined the data. "Matriarch," Opal said, her voice tinged with a mix of awe and concern. "If this is correct, it could revolutionize our entire understanding of hydrogen biology." Commander Zircon stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow over James. "Supreme Matriarch, what are your orders?" Amethyst's gaze locked onto James, her eyes gleaming with intensity. "James Griffin must be isolated immediately. He will undergo an intensive mating regimen with myself and other high-ranking females. We must maximize the potential of this genetic breakthrough." James felt a surge of conflicting emotions, excitement, fear, and a strange sense of purpose. He opened his mouth to speak, but Amethyst continued, her tone brooking no argument. "Commander Zircon, oversee the continued mating sessions for the other human volunteers. Dr. Volkov, you will work with our science team to monitor and analyze all genetic data." As Amethyst issued her commands, James noticed a ripple of unease among some of the hydrogen present. One of the lower-ranking officers stepped forward hesitantly. "Supreme Matriarch, with all due respect, this deviates from our original agreement with Earth." Amethyst's skin flashed with a pattern James interpreted as irritation. "The circumstances have changed. We must adapt our strategies accordingly." Before the tension could escalate further, Commander Zircon interjected. "Supreme Matriarch, I have a proposal that may address our needs while maintaining our alliance with Earth." All eyes turned to Zircon as he outlined his plan for a permanent human settlement on a nearby Hirogen colony world. James listened intently, his mind racing with the possibilities. A new world, a hybrid society. It was beyond anything he had imagined when he first volunteered for this mission. Amethyst considered Zircon's proposal, her skin shifting through a kaleidoscope of colors. "An intriguing suggestion, Commander. We shall dispatch a scouting mission immediately to assess the viability of this plan." She turned back to James, her voice softening slightly. "James Griffin, you will accompany the scouting mission. However, your primary duty remains clear. You will undergo the necessary procedures to prepare for intensive mating sessions during our journey." James nodded, a mix of anticipation and apprehension coursing through him. He glanced at Dr. Volkov, who gave him a reassuring nod. "Dr. Volkov, you will join the mission as well," Amethyst continued. "Your expertise will be crucial in monitoring the ongoing effects of our genetic exchange." As the assembly began to disperse, James found himself being led away by a group of hydrogen medical personnel. Opal fell into step beside him, her presence offering a small measure of comfort amidst the whirlwind of events. "James," Opal said softly, her voice carrying a note of concern, "the procedures you're about to undergo are intense. They will push your body to its limits, but I will be monitoring you closely." James took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "I understand, Opal. I'm ready." As they entered the medical bay, James caught sight of his reflection in a polished surface. He hardly recognized himself. His eyes seemed brighter, his posture more confident. The changes Dr. Volkov had observed in the other volunteers were evident in him as well. The medical team began their work, attaching various devices to James's body. He felt a cool sensation spreading through his veins as they administered a cocktail of enhancing agents. His senses sharpened even further, the world around him coming into hyperfocus. Through the window of the medical bay, James could see the bustle of activity as preparations for the scouting mission got underway. The fate of 2 species now rested on his shoulders and in his genes. As the medical procedures continued, James closed his eyes, his mind drifting to the uncharted world that awaited them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that the journey had only just begun. Begun. As the medical procedures concluded, James felt a surge of energy coursing through his body. The enhancing agents had taken effect, sharpening his senses and heightening his awareness. He sat up, marveling at the newfound strength in his muscles. "Oh, how do you feel, James?" Opal asked, her multifaceted eyes scanning his vitals on a nearby display. "Different," he replied, flexing his fingers. "Stronger, more alive." Before he could elaborate further, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "All key personnel, report to the main hangar. Departure for the scouting mission is imminent." James and Opal exchanged glances before hurrying to the hangar. As they entered the vast space, James was struck by the sight of the sleek scouting ship. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent sheen, reminiscent of Hirogen skin. Supreme Matriarch Amethyst stood at the base of the boarding ramp, her imposing figure drawing all eyes. "James Griffin," she called out, her voice reverberating through the hangar, "you will join me aboard. Your participation is crucial to our mission's success." As James approached, he noticed Dr. Volkov already on board, her face a mix of excitement and apprehension. He nodded to her as he passed, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Once everyone was aboard, the ship's engines hummed to life. James felt a slight lurch as they detached from the main vessel and glided out into open space. Through the viewport, he watched Earth grow smaller, a blue marble shrinking into the vast expanse of stars. No sooner had they cleared Earth's orbit than Amethyst turned to James, her skin pulsing with anticipation. "We must begin immediately," she declared. "The medical bay has been converted for our use. Follow me." James trailed behind the Supreme Matriarch, his heart racing. The medical bay had indeed been transformed. Gone were the sterile surfaces and equipment, replaced by a chamber that seemed almost organic in nature. Pulsating tendrils of light snaked across the walls, and the air was thick with a sweet, intoxicating scent. "This specialized mating chamber will allow us to maximize our genetic exchange," Amethyst explained, her voice taking on a husky quality. "Are you prepared, James Griffin?" James nodded, unable to find words as the matriarch's powerful pheromones enveloped him. As they began their union, he was acutely aware of the monitoring equipment surrounding them, tracking every aspect of their interaction. Over the next several days, James's world narrowed to the mating chamber and the brief periods of rest between sessions. Each encounter with Amethyst seemed more intense than the last, his body pushing beyond limits he never knew existed. During one of his rest periods, Dr. Volkov approached him, her eyes wide with astonishment. "James, the changes in your physiology are remarkable," she said, showing him a holographic display of his body scan. "Your muscle mass has increased by 30%, your bone density has nearly doubled, and your neural activity, it's off the charts." James flexed his arm, noticing the definition of muscles he'd never had before. "I feel it," he replied. "It's like I'm becoming something more than human." As the journey continued, James found himself assisting the Hirogen crew in various tasks. His enhanced senses and newfound strength made him an asset in ways he hadn't anticipated. During a particularly tense moment navigating an uncharted asteroid field, James found himself at the helm, his reflexes working in perfect harmony with the ship's AI to plot a safe course. "Extraordinary," Commander Zircon muttered, watching James's hands fly across the controls. "The human's abilities exceed all projections." As they cleared the asteroid field, a cheer went up from the crew. James leaned back, exhilarated and slightly stunned by his own performance. He caught Amethyst's eye across the bridge, noting the approving gleam in her multifaceted gaze. The ship's long-range sensors pinged, drawing everyone's attention. "Target planet detected," announced the Hirogen navigator. "Initial scans indicate unprecedented compatibility with both human and Hirogen physiology." A hush fell over the bridge as the planet came into view on the main screen. Its surface was a swirling tapestry of blues, greens, and purples, with wispy white clouds drifting across its atmosphere. As they entered orbit, Amethyst called for attention. "I have an announcement," she said, her skin rippling with an array of colors James had never seen before. "I am with child, a hybrid child, conceived with James Griffin." The news sent shockwaves through the crew. James felt a surge of emotions, pride, fear, wonder, as he processed the implications. A new species, born of human and hydrogen union, was now a reality. As they prepared for planetfall, James insisted on joining the first landing party despite his physical exhaustion. As the landing craft descended through the planet's atmosphere, he pressed his hand against the viewport, watching in awe as the air itself seemed to shimmer and dance with colors reminiscent of hydrogen bioluminescence. The moment the craft touched down, James felt an inexplicable connection to this new world. As the hatch opened and he stepped onto the surface, a visible wave of energy rippled out from where his foot made contact with the soil. The nearby vegetation seemed to respond, growing and changing before their eyes. "Incredible," breathed Dr. Volkov, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "James, your presence is catalyzing evolutionary processes across the entire ecosystem." As the survey team spread out to explore, James stood atop a nearby hill, taking in the vibrant, ever-changing landscape. The implications of their discovery greatly troubled on him, yet he felt a sense of purpose he'd never known before. In the distance, partially obscured by the rapidly evolving plant life, he spotted what appeared to be ruins of an ancient structure. As he moved closer to investigate, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a journey that would reshape the future of both humans and Hirigen alike. As James approached the ancient structure, he felt a tingling sensation spread across his skin. Glancing down, he noticed a faint glow emanating from his arms. Intricate patterns of light danced across his flesh, reminiscent of the bioluminescent displays he had observed in the Hirigen. "Dr. Volkov," he called out, his voice imbued with a mix of awe and concern. "I think you should see this." The scientist hurried over, her eyes widening as she took in the sight. "Fascinating," she breathed, pulling out a handheld scanner. "Your physiology continues to evolve at an accelerated rate. This bioluminescence appears to be a new form of nonverbal communication." Before they could discuss further, a low growl echoed through the clearing. The survey team froze as a massive creature emerged from the dense foliage. It resembled a saber-toothed tiger, but with the sleek, predatory features of a Hirigen hunting beast. Its muscles rippled beneath iridescent fur as it stalked towards them, eyes fixed on James. Instinctively, James raised his hands, palms out. To his surprise, the patterns on his skin shifted, emitting a soft, pulsating glow. The creature paused, its aggressive stance relaxing as it watched the light display. "Don't move," James whispered to the others. He concentrated, allowing the light patterns to flow naturally. The beast's eyes followed the mesmerizing dance of bioluminescence, its growl fading to a low rumble. Dr. Volkov slowly raised her scanner, capturing data on both James and the creature. "Incredible," she murmured. "You're emitting a specific frequency that's calming it. This could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies communication." As the tension dissipated, the survey team cautiously began to set up equipment to study the creature from a safe distance. James maintained his light display, marveling at this newfound ability. Meanwhile, aboard the ship, Amethyst's pregnancy progressed at an alarming rate. Within days, her abdomen swelled visibly, stretching her iridescent skin. Dr. Volkov, splitting her time between the planet's surface and the ship, found herself constantly monitoring the matriarch's condition. "The fetal development is unlike anything I've ever seen," she reported during a briefing. "The hybrid's growth rate is off the charts. At this pace, we could be looking at a birth within weeks, possibly days." On the third day of the expedition, James led a team into a network of caverns discovered beneath the planet's surface. As they descended, their lights illuminated vast chambers filled with advanced technology. "These structures," one of the Hirigen scientists noted, "they bear similarities to ancient ruins found on our homeworld, but the level of preservation here is unprecedented." James approached a central console, its surface covered in dust. As his hand brushed against it, the entire system hummed to life. Holographic displays flickered into existence, filling the cavern with a soft blue glow. "It's responding to your touch, Vasmermi," Dr. Volkov observed, her voice filled with excitement. "Your hybrid DNA must be acting as some sort of key." As James interacted with the system, information flooded the displays. The team watched in awe as they deciphered the data, revealing the planet's true nature. It's not just a habitable world, James breathed. It's a seed bank, a repository of genetic material from across the galaxy, and we've just activated its resurrection protocol. No sooner had the words left his mouth than alarms began to sound throughout the cavern. The ground trembled beneath their feet as hidden chambers opened, releasing long-dormant life forms into the world above. The survey team rushed to the surface, emerging to a landscape transformed. Creatures that defied imagination roamed the plains and soared through the skies. A woolly, mammoth-like beast with bioluminescent tusks trudged past, while reptilian creatures with multiple sets of wings darted overhead. As they stood in awe of the unfolding spectacle, an urgent communication came through from the ship. "James," Opal's voice crackled over the comm, "you need to return immediately. Amethyst has gone into labor." The journey back to the ship was a blur of activity. James arrived at the medical bay to find it transformed into a makeshift delivery room. Hydrogen and human medical staff worked in perfect synchronization, their focus solely on Amethyst. Hours passed in a haze of tense anticipation. Finally, with a final push and a cry that seemed to shake the very hull of the ship, Amethyst gave birth. But instead of one child, two tiny forms emerged, twins, a boy and a girl. James stepped forward, his heart pounding as he gazed upon his children for the first time. Their skin shimmered with a perfect blend of human and Hirogen bioluminescence, tiny patterns of light dancing across their bodies. As he cradled the newborns, a flurry of activity erupted around him. Reports flooded in from Earth and the Hirogen homeworld, the news of the successful hybrid birth sending shock waves through both societies. Amidst the chaos, James's attention was drawn to the view screen overlooking Genesis. The planet's surface was alive with movement, massive structures rising from beneath the ground, reshaping the landscape before their eyes. "James," Dr. Volkov called, her voice urgent. "The planet's systems are fully active now. They're creating an environment specifically suited for hybrid life. We need to investigate further." As James prepared to lead another expedition to the surface, a priority transmission cut through the commotion. The message was clear and alarming. Other galactic powers had taken notice of their activities. A coalition fleet was assembling, its intentions unknown but potentially hostile. Amethyst, recovering with remarkable speed, called for an immediate strategy meeting. As James made his way to the bridge, he felt the weight of their discoveries pressing down upon him. The future of two species, perhaps the entire galaxy, now hung in the balance with Genesis at the center of it all. Enter. James took a deep breath, steadying himself as he absorbed the gravity of the situation. The future of two species, perhaps the entire galaxy, now hung in the balance, with Genesis at the center of it all. He exchanged a meaningful glance with Amethyst, their silent communication conveying volumes. "We need a plan," James said, breaking the tense silence that had fallen over the bridge. "We can't face this coalition fleet unprepared." Dr. Volkov nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. "We need to present our case, show them that what we've discovered here isn't a threat, but an opportunity for advancement." Amethyst's skin rippled with thoughtful hues. "Agreed, but we must also protect Genesis and continue our work here. We cannot allow outside forces to interfere with the planet's development or the safety of our children." After hours of intense discussion and debate, a strategy began to take shape. They would divide their efforts to address the immediate threat while continuing their vital work on Genesis. "I'll return to Earth with one of the twins," James announced, his voice firm with purpose. "Dr. Volkov, I'll need you with me. We'll present our case to the United Nations and the approaching alien delegation." Amethyst nodded, her luminescent patterns pulsing with a mix of concern and drive. "I will remain here with the other twin. We must continue to explore the ancient technology and oversee the colonization efforts." Before their departure, James and Amethyst made their way to the planet's central control hub. As they entered the vast chamber, the air seemed to hum with latent energy. James felt a tingling sensation across his skin, his newly developed bioluminescence responding to the ancient technology surrounding them. Their mating, this time infused with the raw power of the planet itself, was unlike anything they had experienced before. As their bodies joined, waves of energy pulsed through the chamber, spreading outward across the entire planet. The ground beneath them trembled, and through the hub's viewing screens, they watched in awe as Genesis began to transform at an accelerated rate. New land masses rose from the depths of alien oceans, while the atmosphere visibly shifted, optimizing itself for the hybrid species. The planet was reshaping itself, preparing for its new inhabitants. As James prepared to leave, he cradled one of the twins in his arms. The infant girl, whom they had named Aurora, gazed up at him with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. Amethyst held their son, Orion, close to her chest, her skin glowing with maternal warmth. "Be safe," Amethyst said, touching her forehead to James's in a tender gesture, "and return to us quickly." James nodded, his throat tight with emotion. He boarded the shuttle with Dr. Volkov and Aurora, watching as Genesis grew smaller in the view screen. Suddenly, a powerful psychic connection blossomed in his mind, linking him to the planet they were leaving behind. With this newfound ability, James found he could interface directly with the shuttle systems, plotting the most efficient course back to Earth. As they hurtled through space at faster-than-light speeds, thanks to the integration of ancient technology in their shuttle, Dr. Volkov marveled at Aurora's rapid development. Within days, the infant had grown to the size of a toddler and had begun to speak, demonstrating an innate understanding of both human and hydrogen cultures. "Her cognitive development is off the charts," Dr. Volkov said, running another scan on the child. "It seems the unique radiation emitted during her conception has accelerated her growth and mental capabilities exponentially." As they approached Earth's solar system, a massive alien vessel intercepted them. The ship was a behemoth, stretching over 100 kilometers in length and dwarfing anything in Earth's fleet. James swallowed hard, steeling himself for the diplomatic challenge ahead. Using his enhanced abilities, James negotiated a meeting with the alien leaders aboard their vessel. As they docked, he couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and trepidation at the scale of the alien ship. The diplomatic summit took place in a vast chamber that seemed designed to accommodate a wide variety of alien physiologies. James, Dr. Volkov, and Aurora stood before a council of diverse alien species, each more bizarre and unique than the last. Some floated in anti-gravity fields, while others towered over them on multiple limbs. The lead council member, a being composed of shimmering energy, addressed them. "We have grave concerns about the rapid genetic advancements and the activation of ancient technology on Genesis. This could upset the balance of power in our galaxy." James stepped forward, his skin glowing with subtle patterns that seemed to captivate the alien delegates. "Esteemed council members, what we've discovered on Genesis isn't a threat, but an opportunity for unprecedented advancement and cooperation between species." As James presented their case, demonstrating the potential benefits of human hydrogen hybridization and the rediscovery of the ancient civilization's legacy, Aurora stepped forward. Despite being only days old, she addressed the council directly, her childlike voice carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. "We stand at the threshold of a new era," Aurora said, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intelligence. "The knowledge and technology of Genesis offer solutions to problems that have plagued our galaxy for millennia. We invite you to join us in this journey of discovery." The council chamber fell silent, the alien delegates visibly stunned by the articulate speech from the hybrid child. As they began to reconsider their preconceptions, an urgent alert echoed through the chamber. Earth's long-range sensors had detected a new threat, a swarm of unidentified objects rapidly approaching the solar system. The energy signatures matched those of the ancient ruins on Genesis, suggesting a connection to the long-lost civilization. The alien council, faced with this new development, exchanged worried glances. The lead counselor turned to James, its energy form flickering with what seemed like concern. "It appears we face a common threat. Perhaps it is time to set aside our differences and work together." As James began to negotiate the terms of a temporary alliance, he received an urgent communication from Amethyst on Genesis. Her voice, tinged with excitement and trepidation, filled the chamber. "James, you won't believe what we found," she said, her words accompanied by a visual feed of a massive underground city. "The terraforming has uncovered an entire civilization preserved in stasis pods. And James, they're waking up." The alien council erupted in a cacophony of voices and sounds, each species reacting to this groundbreaking news in their own way. James locked eyes with Dr. Volkov, both of them realizing that their mission had just become far more complex and far more important. As the diplomatic discussions intensified, James couldn't help but feel that they were standing on the precipice of a new age. With the threat of the approaching swarm looming over them and the awakening of an ancient civilization on Genesis, the hope of the universe hung in the balance. And somehow he found himself at the center of it all. James took a deep breath, steeling himself for the journey ahead. With a nod to Dr. Volkov and Aurora, he initiated the shuttle's launch sequence. As they left the alien vessel, James felt a surge of commitment coursing through him. Their mission was clear: return to Genesis and face the challenges that awaited them. The journey back was swift, thanks to the ancient technology integrated into their shuttle. As they approached Genesis, James's jaw dropped. The planet before them bore little resemblance to the one they had left. Vast continents had risen from the seas, covered in lush forests and towering mountains. Crystalline lakes dotted the landscape, reflecting the light of the system star. But it was the massive structure emerging from the planet's surface that truly captured their attention. A gleaming metropolis of alien design stood proudly, its architecture unlike anything James had ever seen. As they entered the atmosphere, James felt a powerful psychic connection wash over him. It was as if the planet itself was reaching out, welcoming him home. Through this connection, he sensed movement beneath the surface, thousands of minds stirring from a long slumber. Their shuttle touched down near the newly exposed city. Amethyst stood waiting, her skin pulsing with vibrant colors. In her arms, she held a toddler who looked remarkably like Aurora. "James," Amethyst called out, her voice filled with a mix of joy and urgency. "So much has happened. This is Nova, Aurora's twin. They've both grown so rapidly." James embraced his mate and children, marveling at their accelerated development. Aurora, who had left Genesis as a newborn, now stood beside her brother, both children appearing to be several years old. Dr. Volkov immediately began scanning the twins, her eyes widening at the results. "Their cellular structure is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's as if they're evolving in real time." Before they could discuss further, a group of beings emerged from the city. Their forms were diverse, some humanoid, others more exotic, but all carried an air of ancient wisdom. One of them, a tall, graceful figure with shimmering silver skin, stepped forward. "Welcome, James and Amethyst. We are the progenitors, creators of both human and hydrogen species. We have awaited your return for millennia." James's mind reeled at this revelation. "You created us?" The progenitor nodded. "Long ago, our civilization spanned the galaxy, but faced with a cosmic threat, we retreated here to Genesis, leaving behind seeds of our legacy on various worlds, including Earth and the Hirogen homeworld." Amethyst's skin flickered with a pattern James recognized as curiosity. "And now you've awakened. Why?" "Because the threat we fled has returned," another progenitor said, gesturing to the sky. "The swarm approaches, and you two are key to our defense." As if on cue, alarms blared across the planet. The joint task force that had accompanied them from Earth began scrambling into defensive positions, their ships forming a protective barrier around Genesis. The lead progenitor turned to James and Amethyst. "You are the fulfillment of our long-term genetic plan. We must unlock your full potential if we are to survive what's coming. Will you undergo the ritual?" James and Amethyst exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. They nodded in unison. The progenitors led them deep into the heart of the underground city, to a vast chamber filled with swirling energy and pulsating crystals. As they entered, James felt the psychic connection to the planet intensify. "The ritual will merge your consciousnesses and connect you to the planet's core," a progenitor elder explained. It may be intense, but it is necessary. James and Amethyst stepped into the center of the chamber. As they embraced, waves of energy pulsed through them. James gasped as his mind expanded, merging with Amethyst's and connecting to something far greater, the living consciousness of Genesis itself. Visions flooded their shared consciousness. They saw the galaxy's past, the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They witnessed the progenitor's retreat to Genesis and the seeding of Earth in the Hirogen homeworld. And they saw the true nature of the approaching swarm. A rogue faction of progenitors evolved into a hive mind, consuming worlds in their path. As the ritual reached its peak, James felt the planet shifting around them. Through their connection, they sensed massive structures rising from beneath the surface, ancient weapon systems coming online. Genesis was transforming into a fortress world. When the ritual ended, James and Amethyst found themselves changed. Energy crackled at their fingertips, and they could feel the fundamental forces of nature bending to their will. They emerged from the chamber to find Genesis transformed. A shimmering energy shield now enveloped the planet, and the landscape bristled with advanced weaponry. Aurora and Nova ran to their parents, their eyes glowing with newfound power. "We can hear the planet," Aurora said, her voice filled with wonder. "We can control the machines." As James watched his children interface effortlessly with progenitor technology, he realized the true scope of what they faced. This wasn't just about saving two species anymore. The destiny of the universe hung in the balance. In the distance, the first ships of the swarm appeared, dark specks against the star-filled sky. Genesis pulsed with energy, preparing for the coming storm. James looked at Amethyst, their new powers humming between them, and knew that the real test was just beginning. James took a deep breath, his newly acquired powers thrumming through his veins. He turned to Amethyst, their shared consciousness allowing for silent communication. "We need to coordinate our defenses," James said aloud, his voice carrying a newfound authority. "Amethyst, you focus on the weapon systems. I'll reinforce the energy shield." Amethyst nodded, her skin pulsing with vibrant hues of grit. As she interfaced with the planet's advanced weaponry, James reached out with his mind, feeling the energy shield that enveloped Genesis. He could sense its weak points, its fluctuations, and with a mere thought, he began to strengthen it. The first wave of the swarm entered the system, a vast armada of biomechanical ships moving with eerie synchronicity. The Joint Task Force engaged immediately, a dazzling display of firepower lighting up the void of space. On the surface, the ground trembled beneath their feet. James watched in awe as mountains rose from flat plains, canyons carved themselves into the landscape, and natural fortifications sprouted across Genesis. The progenitors had activated their ancient terraforming engines, reshaping the planet into a fortress world in real time. Dr. Volkov's voice crackled over the communication system. "James, Amethyst, I've made a breakthrough. The swarm ships are vulnerable to specific energy frequencies. We can disrupt their hive mind connection." James relayed this information to the defense forces, watching as they quickly adapted their weapons. The effectiveness of their counterattack increased dramatically, swarm ships falling to the modified weaponry. Aurora and Nova, now appearing as preteens, approached their parents. "We can help," Aurora said, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly intelligence. "We can predict their movements." Before James could respond, alarms blared. A small group of swarm ships had broken through the defensive line and entered Genesis' atmosphere. "I'll handle this," James said, his body crackling with energy. He launched himself into the sky, leading a strike team to intercept the invaders. The biomechanical entities that emerged from the swarm ships were unlike anything James had ever encountered. They moved with a fluid grace that belied their mechanical nature, their attacks swift and precise. James dodged a barrage of energy blasts, his enhanced reflexes barely keeping him alive. As he engaged in close combat with one of the entities, James felt his new powers surge. He channeled the fundamental forces of nature, using gravity itself to crush his opponent. The fight was intense, pushing James to the limits of his newfound abilities. Back at the central control hub, Amethyst gasped as a powerful psychic vision overwhelmed her. She saw a vast, pulsating intelligence at the heart of the swarm. The Nexus, a being that had once been a progenitor, but had evolved into something beyond comprehension. "James," she called out through their psychic link, "we need to combine our abilities. There's a central intelligence controlling the swarm. We can find it." As James returned from his successful defense of the planet's surface, he and Amethyst initiated another mating ritual. This time they focused on merging their psychic abilities, surrounded by progenitor elders who channeled the planet's energy to amplify their powers. Their consciousness expanded beyond Genesis, reaching out into the void of space. They sensed the Nexus hidden within the heart of the swarm fleet. As they relayed its location to the Joint Task Force, Commander Zircon proposed a daring plan. "We can use a captured swarm ship," the Hirogen leader suggested, "modify it with progenitor technology, infiltrate their fleet, and strike at the Nexus directly." James volunteered immediately, recognizing that his unique abilities made him the ideal candidate for this crucial mission. As he prepared, undergoing intensive training with the progenitor elders, Amethyst worked tirelessly with Dr. Volkov and the alien scientists to modify the captured swarm ship. The strain on Genesis' defenses grew with each passing moment. The progenitors warned that even their advanced technology would eventually be overwhelmed if the attack continued at its current intensity. As James boarded the modified ship ready to embark on his mission, Aurora and Nova approached. The twins, now appearing as teenagers, stood tall and resolute. "We're coming with you," Nova stated, his voice brooking no argument. "Our ability to interface with both progenitor and swarm technology could be the key to success." James hesitated, torn between recognizing the truth in his children's words and the parental instinct to protect them. He looked at Amethyst, seeing his own conflict mirrored in her eyes. Before a decision could be made, the swarm redoubled its efforts. The energy shield flickered, and the ground shook with the impact of their attacks. Time was running out. James stood at the entrance to the modified swarm ship, the fate of Genesis and the entire galaxy hanging in the balance. He looked at his children, then back at Amethyst and the assembled defenders of Genesis. The moment of truth had arrived, and the next few minutes would determine whether he faced the Nexus alone or with his extraordinary children by his side. The weight of the decision pressed heavily upon him, but the urgency of the situation demanded action. "All right," James said, his voice firm but tinged with concern. "You're coming with me. Your abilities may be our best chance at success." Aurora and Nova's faces lit up with a mixture of excitement and persistence. Amethyst stepped forward, her skin pulsing with a kaleidoscope of colors that reflected her conflicting emotions. "Be safe," she said, embracing her family. "I'll maintain our psychic link from here and coordinate the planet's defenses." With a final nod to the assembled defenders, James led his children into the modified swarm ship. The interior was a bizarre fusion of alien technology, its surfaces pulsing with an eerie blue light. As James took the pilot's seat, Aurora and Nova positioned themselves at the hybrid control interfaces. "Ready?" James asked, his hands hovering over the controls. The twins responded in unison, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light as they connected with the ship's systems. "Ready." The ship's engines thrummed to life, and they launched from Genesis's surface. Almost immediately, they were engulfed in the chaos of the space battle. Swarm vessels swarmed around them, energy weapons lighting up the void. James's enhanced reflexes kicked in as he maneuvered through the melee. His hands danced across the controls, the ship responding to his every command with preternatural speed. "Incoming!" Nova called out, his mind processing the swarm's movements faster than any computer. James banked hard, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy blasts. Aurora's fingers flew across her interface, activating the ship's camouflage systems. The vessel's exterior shifted, mimicking the biomechanical appearance of the swarm ships. As they penetrated deeper into the enemy fleet, the twins' unique abilities proved invaluable. Their minds reached out, interfacing with the swarm's neural network. "Dad," Aurora said, her voice filled with awe, "it's like a giant organism. All the ships are interconnected." James nodded, his eyes scanning the space ahead. Can you find any weaknesses? Nova's brow furrowed in concentration. There are gaps in the network, less populated areas we can use to our advantage. Drawing on his hydrogen hunting experience, James guided the ship through these sparse sectors. They used debris from destroyed vessels as cover, steadily making their way towards the heart of the swarm. As they neared their target, a massive sphere of advanced swarm ships came into view. These guardians were unlike anything they had encountered before, their hulls crackling with energy. "They've detected us," Aurora said, her voice tense. "Our camouflage isn't fooling them." James's mind raced, formulating a plan. "We'll use the progenitor tech to broadcast a false distress signal. Make them think we're a damaged swarm ship." The twins worked in perfect synchronization, manipulating the ship's systems to emit the fake distress call. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, a gap appeared in the defensive sphere. "Now!" James shouted, pushing the ship to its limits as he piloted through the opening. They burst through the other side, and there it was, the Nexus, a massive, pulsating structure that resembled a colossal brain, with tendrils of energy connecting it to the surrounding ships. As James maneuvered towards the central hub, Aurora and Nova combined their abilities, reaching out to establish a preliminary psychic connection with the Nexus. Suddenly, the twins gasped in unison. "Dad," Aurora said, her voice shaking, "it's not just one being. It's millions of minds all connected." Nova's eyes widened in shock. "There are human and Herigen signatures in there. It's been influencing our evolution for thousands of years." James felt a chill run down his spine as he docked the ship with the Nexus. As they donned their protective suits, he created an energy field around his family, a shimmering barrier against the biomechanical tendrils that reached for them. The moment they stepped onto the Nexus's surface, their minds were assaulted by a torrent of psychic information. Visions of countless civilizations flashed before their eyes, worlds both thriving and destroyed. The vast tapestry of galactic history unfolding in an instant. James gritted his teeth, drawing on his Herigen meditation techniques to resist the psychic onslaught. He extended his mental defenses, shielding Aurora and Nova from the worst of the assault. "Focus," he urged his children. "Use your abilities to decode the information." As the twins sifted through the complex streams of data, James felt the Nexus attempting to overwhelm their minds, to absorb them into its collective consciousness. He reinforced his mental barriers, fighting to maintain their individuality against the relentless pressure. Slowly, the true purpose behind the swarm's invasion began to emerge. The Nexus, driven by a warped interpretation of its original progenitor programming, sought to unify all sentient life into a single, collective entity. It viewed this forced assimilation as the pinnacle of evolution, a misguided attempt at galactic peace. James realized with growing dread that simply destroying the Nexus would doom millions of absorbed consciousnesses. They needed another way. "We have to reprogram it," he said, his voice strained from the effort of maintaining their psychic defenses. "Change its core directives to respect individual autonomy while preserving the benefits of shared knowledge." Aurora and Nova nodded, understanding the gravity of the task ahead. James took a deep breath, preparing himself for what he knew would be the most challenging and dangerous moment of his life. "I'm going to interface directly with the Nexus's central core," he told his children. "I'll have to lower my mental defenses. I need you to channel energy from Genesis through your link with your mother. It's the only way I'll have enough power to reshape the Nexus from within." As James stepped towards the pulsating core of the Nexus, the surrounding swarm ships began to react violently. The collective consciousness, sensing the threat to its existence, fought back with all its might. Time was running out. The fate of the stars hung in the balance. James locked eyes with his children one last time, then plunged his consciousness into the heart of the Nexus. The battle for the future of all sentient life had begun, and its outcome was far from certain. The massive entity shuddered, its pulsating surface rippling with energy as James made contact. The moment his consciousness merged with the Nexus, James was engulfed in a maelstrom of information. Millions of voices cried out in his mind, a cacophony of memories and experiences threatening to drown his sense of self. He gritted his teeth, drawing upon years of hydrogen mental discipline to maintain his identity amidst the onslaught. Focus, he told himself, pushing through the chaos. Find the core. As James navigated the swirling vortex of data, he sensed Aurora and Nova's presence, their psychic link a lifeline tethering him to reality. Through this connection, he felt the steady pulse of energy from Genesis, channeled by Amethyst. It flowed into him, strengthening his perseverance and amplifying his abilities. Within the Nexus, James encountered pockets of resistance, fragments of absorbed minds that had retained shreds of their original identities. These semi-autonomous consciousnesses recognized him as an outside force, their voices rising above the din. "You seek to change us," one voice echoed, neither hostile nor welcoming. "To free you," James responded, his thoughts reverberating through the Nexus. As he pushed deeper, James sensed the core growing nearer. The resistance intensified, the Nexus fighting to maintain its current form. James pressed on, his enhanced senses guiding him through the labyrinth of data. Outside, Aurora and Nova maintained their positions, their faces etched with concentration as they channeled energy to their father. Suddenly, the space around them erupted into chaos. The Guardian ships surrounding the Nexus began to converge on their position, weapons primed. "They've detected us," Aurora said, her fingers dancing across the ship's interface. Nova nodded, his mind already reaching out to the Nexus's biomechanical structure. "We need to buy Dad more time." Together, the twins exerted their will on the living metal around them. The surface of the Nexus responded, reshaping itself to form a protective shell around their makeshift docking area. The Guardian ship's attacks glanced off the newly formed barrier, but the twins knew it wouldn't hold forever. Back on Genesis, Amethyst coordinated the planet's defenses, her skin shimmering with psychic energy. The swarm ships attacked with increasing irregularity, their movements erratic and unpredictable. "Something's happening," Commander Zircon observed, his hydrogen instincts on high alert. "The swarm is losing cohesion." Amethyst nodded, feeling the subtle shifts through her link with James. "He's disrupting their connection to the Nexus. Press the advantage." As the hydrogen forces launched a counteroffensive, Dr. Volkov burst into the command center, her eyes wide with excitement. "I've made a breakthrough," she announced, presenting a holographic display of complex genetic structures. "The swarm ships share a common genetic marker with both humans and hydrogen. The Nexus has been influencing our evolution for millennia." Amethyst's eyes narrowed as she processed this information. Without hesitation, she gathered her psychic energy and sent a powerful pulse through her link with James and the twins, carrying this crucial data. Within the Nexus, James felt the surge of information from Amethyst. The genetic data unfolded in his mind, revealing new pathways and connections. With this key, he began to unravel the Nexus's defenses, asserting greater control over the collective consciousness. As James worked to rewrite the Nexus's core directives, he felt the entity's resistance weakening. The oppressive pressure of millions of minds began to subside, replaced by a sense of awakening. Individual consciousnesses stirred, many experiencing a return to self-awareness for the first time in eons. The effects rippled outward. On Genesis, the attacking swarm ships suddenly fell dormant, hanging motionless in space. The Nexus itself began to shrink, its vast network condensing into a more concentrated form. James prepared to extract himself from the Nexus, his mission nearly complete. However, a faction of the oldest, most deeply integrated minds rallied against him, refusing to accept the changes. They lashed out, attempting to trap James within the collective. Sensing their father's struggle, Aurora and Nova made a split-second decision. They left the safety of their ship, their hybrid physiology allowing them to interface directly with the Nexus's biomechanical structure. As they entered, they felt the full force of the Nexus's consciousness wash over them. But instead of being overwhelmed, their unique abilities allowed them to navigate the psychic currents with surprising ease. "Dad!" Aurora called out, her voice echoing through the collective mindscape. "We're here!" James felt his children's presence, their familiar minds bolstering his own. With renewed strength, he pushed back against the resistant faction, his will reinforced by the twins' unwavering support. The final barriers crumbled, and the Nexus's programming shifted. The drive for forced assimilation gave way to a desire for peaceful coexistence and voluntary knowledge sharing. As the transformation completed, James, Aurora, and Nova prepared to withdraw. But as they began their exit, they felt a new presence stirring within the Nexus. The entity, freed from its singular purpose, had gained a form of true sentience. It reached out to them, its thoughts no longer a cacophony, but a single curious voice. "What am I?" the Nexus asked, its newly awakened consciousness filled with wonder and uncertainty. James, Aurora, and Nova exchanged glances, realizing that their mission had taken an unexpected turn. The Nexus, with its vast knowledge and capabilities, now sought to learn and coexist with other species. As they returned to their ship, the family knew that the challenges ahead would be complex and unpredictable. They had reshaped the Nexus, but integrating this new entity into the galactic community would require all of their skills in diplomacy. The transformed Nexus followed them, its once massive form now condensed into a more manageable size. As they approached Genesis, James could already imagine the mix of awe and fear their arrival would inspire. "Well," James said, looking at his children and the sentient Nexus accompanying them, "I think we have some explaining to do." Aurora and Nova nodded, their expressions a mix of excitement and apprehension. As Genesis grew larger in their view screen, they prepared themselves for the next phase of their extraordinary journey, one that would shape the future of the galaxy in ways they had never imagined. As their ship docked with Genesis, James took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. The transformed Nexus, now a shimmering orb of concentrated energy, hovered beside them, its presence both awe-inspiring and unsettling. The moment they stepped onto the landing platform, they were met by a sea of faces, human, Hirogen, and various alien species, all wearing expressions that range from curiosity to outright fear. Commander Zircon, his posture rigid with tension, strode forward to meet them. "James," he said, his voice low and cautious, "what exactly have you brought back with you?" James placed a reassuring hand on the Hirogen commander's shoulder. "It's not what it was, Zircon. We've fundamentally changed its core directives. The Nexus no longer seeks to assimilate, it wants to coexist." Zircon's eyes narrowed, his gaze fixed on the pulsating orb. "And you're certain of this?" Before James could respond, Dr. Volkov pushed her way through the crowd, her eyes alight with scientific curiosity. "This is extraordinary," she exclaimed, circling the Nexus with barely suppressed excitement. "We must study it immediately. I propose we establish a dedicated research facility right here on Genesis." The suggestion sent a ripple of murmurs through the gathered crowd. An Arcturian diplomat stepped forward, his crystalline form glinting in the sunlight. "While we appreciate the potential benefits, we must insist on strict security measures. The threat this entity once posed cannot be forgotten." James nodded, understanding their concerns. "Agreed. We'll need to create a controlled environment where we can safely interact with and study the Nexus." Amethyst, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "We can use the progenitor technology to create a containment field. It will allow for safe interaction while preventing any potential resurgence of its former behavior." As the group discussed the logistics of creating such a facility, James noticed Aurora and Nova standing slightly apart, their eyes unfocused as if listening to something only they could hear. He approached them, concern etched on his face. "Are you two all right?" he asked softly. Aurora blinked, turning to her father. "We're fine, Dad. It's just... everything feels different now, clearer somehow." Nova nodded in agreement. "It's like we can see the connections between things. The planet, the technology, even the people around us." James exchanged a worried glance with Amethyst, who had joined them. Their children's enhanced abilities, while impressive, raised new questions and concerns. Over the next few days, Genesis became a hive of activity. Teams from various species worked tirelessly to construct the containment facility, combining their diverse technologies into a marvel of engineering. Human scientists collaborated with Hirogen weapons experts, while alien energy specialists fine-tuned the containment field. As the facility took shape, the Nexus began to communicate more frequently with James and his family. Its thoughts, once a chaotic storm of millions of minds, now coalesced into a singular, inquisitive voice. "I wish to make amends," it said one evening as James stood before its shimmering form, "to use the knowledge I've gained to benefit all." James nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's a noble goal, but it will take time for others to trust you. We'll need to proceed cautiously." To test the Nexus's sincerity and capabilities, James proposed a series of controlled experiments. The first involved connecting the entity to an isolated computer network. As the connection was established, screens around the room lit up with a flurry of activity. Complex equations solved themselves in seconds, and long-standing scientific quandaries unraveled before their eyes. Dr. Volkov, watching the display with wide-eyed wonder, turned to James. "This is revolutionary. The advancements we could make with this level of computational power." Encouraged by the initial success, James suggested a more ambitious test, allowing the Nexus to interface with one of the dormant swarm ships. The proposal met with immediate resistance from some coalition members. "Absolutely not," growled a phalanx warrior, his exoskeleton dripping with agitation. "We cannot risk giving it control of a weapon platform." After hours of heated debate, a compromise was reached. The test would proceed under strict conditions, with multiple fail-safes in place. As preparations for this crucial experiment began, James and Amethyst felt drawn to perform another mating ritual. They made their way to a newly formed crystal cavern deep within Genesis, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that mimicked the flow of data within the Nexus. As their energies merged, they were swept into a vision of potential futures. They saw a galaxy transformed, barriers between species crumbling as knowledge and understanding flowed freely. But they also glimpsed darker possibilities. The power of the Nexus twisted to nefarious ends, plunging the galaxy into chaos. When the vision faded, James and Amethyst found themselves back in the cavern, their bodies humming with renewed purpose. They knew their role as mediators between the Nexus and the galactic community was more crucial than ever. The day of the swarm ship interface test arrived, bringing with it a palpable tension that hung over Genesis like a storm cloud. Coalition members gathered in the control room, their faces grim with concentration as final checks were performed. James stood before the Nexus, his children flanking him on either side. "Are you ready?" he asked the shimmering entity. "I am," the Nexus replied, its voice resonating with a mix of eagerness and apprehension. As the countdown began, James felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The next few minutes would shape the course of galactic history, for better or worse. He took a deep breath, gave a nod to the technician, and watched as the connection between the Nexus and the swarm ship was established. The room fell silent as everyone held their breath, watching the monitors intently. At first, the connection appeared successful. The swarm ship, suspended in the shielded area of space near Genesis, responded to basic commands from the Nexus with surprising precision. It executed a series of maneuvers, each more complex than the last, without any sign of aggression. Commander Zircon's tense posture relaxed slightly. "Impressive," he muttered, his eyes fixed on the graceful movements of the ship. Dr. Volkov nodded enthusiastically. "The level of control is remarkable. This could revolutionize our understanding of biomechanical interfaces." As the test progressed, however, James noticed a subtle change in the ship's behavior. Its movements became less fluid, more erratic. He leaned forward, his brow furrowing. "Something's not right," he said, his voice low but urgent. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the control room. The swarm ship's hull began to pulse with an eerie, familiar energy, a remnant of its former assimilative nature. "It's activating dormant systems," Dr. Volkov shouted, her fingers flying across her console. "The fail-safes aren't responding." James's mind raced. "Terminate the connection now!" Technicians scrambled to comply, but their efforts were in vain. The link between the Nexus and the ship remained stubbornly intact. On the main view screen, they watched in horror as the swarm ship's weapon systems came online, its trajectory altering ominously towards Genesis. Commander Zircon sprang into action. "Deploy interceptors," he barked into his communicator. "Neutralize that ship at all costs." As a squadron of Hirogen fighters streaked out of Genesis's atmosphere, James realized the gravity of the situation. Destroying the ship might save Genesis, but it could undo all the progress they'd made with the Nexus. He turned to Amethyst, his decision already made. "I'm going out there." Amethyst's eyes widened. "James, no!" But Aurora and Nova stepped forward, their faces set with purpose. "We're coming too," Aurora said firmly. "Our abilities might be the key to resolving this," Nova added. James wanted to protest, to keep his children safe, but he knew they were right. Time was of the essence. He nodded curtly. "Let's go." As they raced to the hangar, Amethyst's voice echoed in James's mind. "Be careful, my love. Come back to me." Moments later, their small craft, jam-packed with progenitor tech, shot out of Genesis's docking bay. James piloted with precision, weaving through the oncoming hydrogen interceptors. As they approached the rogue swarm ship, its biomechanical surface writhing with conflicting energies, James felt a familiar tingle at the base of his skull. "Kids, are you feeling this?" he asked, glancing back at Aurora and Nova. They nodded in unison, their eyes glowing faintly. "It's like a call," Aurora said softly. "A plea for help," Nova added. James took a deep breath. "All right, let's do this. Remember your training. Focus on the connection, not the chaos." As one, the family reached out with their minds, establishing a neural link with both the ship and the Nexus. The sensation was overwhelming, a maelstrom of conflicting directives, fragmented memories, and raw, unbridled power. James gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain his sense of self amidst the torrent of information. He could feel Aurora and Nova beside him, their presences steady anchors in the psychic storm. Through their shared consciousness, they began to untangle the web of commands driving the ship's actions. Aurora focused on deciphering the original progenitor codes, her mind dancing through layers of ancient programming. Nova worked on integrating the new peaceful directives, her thoughts a soothing balm to the ship's agitated systems. James acted as the fulcrum, balancing the old and new, seeking harmony where there was discord. It was painstaking work, each small victory threatened by cascading failures elsewhere in the system. Back on Genesis, Amethyst coordinated with Dr. Volkov and the progenitor elders. They recalibrated the planet's defense systems, tuning the energy shield to emit a frequency that resonated with the swarm ship's biomechanical components. As the family's efforts began to take effect, the swarm ship's erratic movements slowed, its weapons powered down, the biomechanical components pulsing in a more rhythmic, controlled pattern. But the strain on James, Aurora, and Nova was immense. Sweat beaded on their foreheads, their bodies trembling with the effort of maintaining the complex neural link. Sensing their struggle, Amethyst made a split-second decision. She placed her hands on the planet's surface and closed her eyes, channeling the power of Genesis itself. The surge of energy flowed through her psychic link to James and the twins, providing the final push needed to fully integrate the Nexus's new directives. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The swarm ship suddenly went still, floating harmlessly in space. The neural link severed, and James, Aurora, and Nova slumped in their seats, exhausted but triumphant. As they guided their craft back to Genesis, James's communicator crackled to life. Commander Zircon's voice came through, a mix of relief and residual tension. "Well done, James, but I hope you understand this isn't over. The Coalition will have questions, many questions." James nodded, though Zircon couldn't see him. "I know," he replied, his voice weary but resolute, "and we'll be ready to answer them." As Genesis loomed larger in their view screen, James looked at his children, their faces tired but glowing with quiet pride. He realized that this was just the beginning. Their unique abilities and experiences had placed them at the center of a transformation that would reshape the galaxy. The hangar bay doors opened to receive them, and as they touched down, James saw a crowd gathering. Coalition leaders, scientists, and curious onlookers pressed forward, eager for answers. At the forefront stood Amethyst, her eyes shining with a mix of love, relief, and something else, a fierce persistence that matched his own. James took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. as a family, as pioneers, as bridges between worlds. The future, uncertain but full of potential, awaited. Beckoned. Taking a deep breath, James stepped forward to address the gathered crowd. "We've achieved a breakthrough," he announced, his voice carrying across the hangar. "But it's just the beginning of our work with the Nexus and this technology." As James spoke, coalition leaders gathered around, their expressions a mix of awe and concern. Commander Zircon pushed to the front, his exoskeleton glinting under the harsh hangar lights. "A breakthrough that nearly led to disaster," the Hirogen growled. "We need safeguards, protocols, and we'll develop them." Amethyst interjected, her voice calm but firm. "Together." In the days that followed, intense discussions led to the establishment of a new research initiative. The coalition, recognizing the unique abilities of James, Amethyst, and their children, approved the construction of a specialized facility on Genesis. Within weeks, a gleaming crystal dome rose from the planet's surface, its facets refracting the light of the nearby star. Inside, state-of-the-art laboratories and containment chambers hummed with activity. James and Amethyst found themselves at the helm of this new endeavor, dubbed Harmony Hub by Dr. Volkov. As they settled into their roles as co-directors, James noticed subtle changes in his physiology. His reflexes sharpened, his strength increased. One morning, he accidentally crushed a metal stylus between his fingers, the material crumpling like paper. Amethyst experienced her own transformations. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin began to shift and dance with greater complexity, forming intricate designs that seemed to pulse with meaning. During a meeting with Hirogen delegates, she found herself communicating entire concepts through these patterns, bypassing the need for verbal language. Their children, Aurora and Nova, displayed even more dramatic developments. James watched in astonishment as Aurora levitated a datapad across the room with a mere thought. Nova, not to be outdone, assembled a complex molecular model in midair, the atoms spinning and combining at her mental command. Dr. Volkov, her scientific curiosity piqued, ran a battery of tests on the family. "Fascinating," she murmured, poring over holographic readouts. "Your continued exposure to Genesis's energies, combined with your unique genetic makeup, is triggering rapid evolutionary adaptations. It's as if your bodies are optimizing themselves for this new environment." The news of these changes spread quickly through the coalition. Some viewed it with excitement, others with trepidation. The Hirogen, in particular, saw it as a sign of favor from their ancestral spirits. Amid the flurry of research and debate, the Nexus continued to offer its vast knowledge. Secured within a specialized chamber in Harmony Hub, the entity worked tirelessly on various projects. One area that garnered significant interest was the development of enhanced terraforming algorithms. Commander Zircon, ever cautious, proposed a field test. "We have a barren moon in a nearby system," he said during a coalition meeting. "If these algorithms are as powerful as you claim, prove it there." James volunteered to lead the expedition, his eyes alight with the prospect of putting theory into practice. Amethyst, sensing his excitement, insisted on joining him. As they prepared for the mission, James and Amethyst felt drawn to perform another mating ritual. They made their way to a newly discovered energy nexus deep within Genesis, its crystalline structures pulsing with an otherworldly glow. Their energies merged, bodies entwining amidst swirling patterns of light. As the ritual reached its peak, both felt a surge of power, unlike anything they'd experienced before. Amethyst gasped, her hand flying to her abdomen. "James," she whispered, her eyes wide, I think we've conceived." Scans confirmed it. A new life was growing within Amethyst, its development accelerated by the unique energies of Genesis and their evolved physiologies. The news sent ripples of excitement and concern through the coalition. The Hirogen, in particular, viewed it as a momentous event. Despite the unexpected pregnancy, the terraforming mission proceeded as planned. James and Amethyst boarded a ship equipped with Nexus-enhanced devices, a team of coalition scientists in tow. As they approached the barren moon, anticipation hung heavy in the air. The moment they activated the terraforming process, something extraordinary occurred. Energy surged from the devices, interacting with the rapidly developing embryo within Amethyst. A feedback loop formed, amplifying the transformation beyond anything they had anticipated. James watched in awe as atmosphere coalesced around the moon, wisps of clouds forming in minutes. Patches of alien vegetation sprouted from the once lifeless rock, spreading like a time-lapse video. "This is incredible," Dr. Volkov's voice crackled over the comm. "We're seeing changes that should take years occurring in hours." As the transformation accelerated, James noticed a change in Amethyst. Her body began to glow, bioluminescent patterns swirling across her skin with increasing intensity. He felt it too, a surge of energy coursing through his veins, his body resonating with the terraforming process. The rest of the team retreated to a safe distance as a vortex of energy engulfed James and Amethyst. Through the swirling light, James saw his mate's face contort in a mix of wonder and pain. "James," Amethyst gasped, her voice strained. "The baby, it's coming!" Faced with this unprecedented situation, James drew on his newfound strength and instincts. As Amethyst's labor intensified, he worked to stabilize both her and the raging terraforming energies around them. Back on Genesis, Aurora and Nova sensed the incredible surge of power. Acting on instinct, they established a deep connection with the Nexus, their minds reaching across space to guide and support their parents. As Amethyst's cries reached a crescendo, a burst of pure energy erupted from her body. James watched in amazement as the energy coalesced, taking the form of a small, radiant being. The newborn's first cry coincided with a final pulse of terraforming energy. As it subsided, James and Amethyst found themselves in the center of a lush, alien garden, cradling their child of light. The expedition team approached cautiously, their faces masks of wonder. Dr. Volkov, her voice barely above a whisper, activated her comlink. "Control, you're not going to believe this. We've done it. The moon is transformed, and we have a new arrival." As news of the successful terraforming and miraculous birth spread, James knew that everything had changed. The boundaries of what they thought possible had been shattered, opening up a new frontier of exploration and discovery. The true implications of their hybrid genetics and their connection to the Nexus were only beginning to unfold. Holding his newborn child, James looked to Amethyst, then out at the transformed world around them. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in their journey, one that would reshape the future of the galaxy in ways they had yet to imagine. Imagine, as the transformed moon hung in the view screen, a testament to their newfound abilities, James and Amethyst exchanged a look of wonder and trepidation. Their child, born of energy and stardust, nestled in Amethyst's arms, its tiny form pulsing with an otherworldly glow. The expedition team's excited chatter filled the air as they documented the miraculous transformation. Dr. Volkov's fingers flew over her datapad, her eyes wide with scientific amazement. "This is beyond our wildest expectations," she breathed, glancing up at the new parents. "We need to get you both back to Genesis for a full examination." As they prepared for the return journey, James noticed Amethyst's worried expression. "What is it?" he asked softly. She looked down at their luminous child. "James, this changes everything. Our family, the coalition. Nothing will be the same after this." He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "We'll face it together," he assured her, placing a hand on her shoulder. The journey back to Genesis was a flurry of activity. News of the successful terraforming and the miraculous birth spread like wildfire through coalition channels. By the time their ship docked, a crowd had gathered in the hangar bay, a mix of curious onlookers and coalition officials. Commander Zircon pushed his way to the front, his exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights. His mandibles clicked with awe-inspiring excitement as James and Amethyst emerged, their glowing child cradled between them. "By the ancestral spirits," Zircon breathed, his compound eyes fixed on the infant. "What do you call this new life?" Amethyst and James exchanged a glance before she answered. "Zephyr. We've named our child Zephyr." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. Dr. Volkov stepped forward, her medical scanner already whirring. "We need to get you to the medical bay immediately. The implications of this birth are staggering." As they made their way through the facility, James noticed the awed stares and hushed whispers that followed them. Aurora and Nova were waiting outside the medical bay, their faces a mix of excitement and concern. "Is that our new sibling?" Aurora asked, her eyes wide as she peered at the glowing bundle. Nova reached out a hand, stopping just short of touching Zephyr. "It's like they're made of pure energy," she marveled. Inside the medical bay, Dr. Volkov and her team ran a battery of tests on both Amethyst and Zephyr. James watched anxiously as holographic displays flickered with streams of data. "Fascinating," Dr. Volkov muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Zephyr's physiology is unlike anything we've seen before. The child seems to be in a constant state of flux between matter and energy." As if to demonstrate, Zephyr's form shimmered, briefly becoming translucent before solidifying again. Amethyst gasped, instinctively tightening her hold on the child. "Is Zephyr stable?" James asked, concern evident in his voice. Dr. Volkov nodded slowly. "For now, yes, but we'll need to set up a specialized monitoring system. The rate of development is unprecedented." Over the next few days, Harmony Hub buzzed with activity. A new wing was quickly constructed to house Zephyr and monitor the child's rapid growth. Coalition scientists worked around the clock, analyzing data from both the terraforming event and Zephyr's unique physiology. James and Amethyst found themselves at the center of a storm of attention. Coalition leaders demanded briefings, scientists pressed for more tests, and even the general population of Genesis clamored for information about the miraculous child. Amid the chaos, Commander Zircon approached James with an unexpected request. "My people wish to settle on the newly terraformed moon," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "We see it as a sign from our ancestors, a new beginning for the Hirogen." James blinked in surprise. "That's a big step, Zircon. Are you sure?" The Hirogen commander nodded solemnly. "We have been nomads for too long. This miracle you and Amethyst have created, it calls to us. We wish to name the moon Genesis Prime and make it our home." As James considered the request, alarms blared from Zephyr's monitoring room. He rushed in to find Amethyst standing over their child, her face a mask of shock. Zephyr, who had been infant-sized just hours ago, now appeared to be a toddler, bluish energy crackling around their form. Dr. Volkov burst into the room, her eyes wide. "The rate of growth is accelerating," she announced, her voice tight with a mix of scientific excitement and concern. "We need to convene an emergency meeting of the coalition leadership. Now." James looked from Zephyr to Amethyst, then to the worried faces of Aurora and Nova who had appeared in the doorway. He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. The future they had imagined was unfolding faster than anyone could have predicted, bringing with it challenges they had yet to fully comprehend. As they prepared for the coalition meeting, James couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The terraforming of Genesis Prime, Zephyr's unprecedented growth, the Hirogen's desire to colonize the new moon. Each development alone would have been significant. Together, they represented a seismic shift in the balance of the galaxy. The coalition chamber was packed as James and Amethyst entered. Zephyr held securely in Amethyst's arms. The child's glow pulsed gently, drawing every eye in the room. As they took their seats, James noticed a new face among the coalition leaders. A tall, silver-skinned being with iridescent eyes who watched them with keen interest. Commander Zircon called the meeting to order, his voice resonating through the chamber. "We are gathered here to discuss recent events of galactic significance," he began, his compound eyes sweeping the room. "The successful terraforming of what we now call Genesis Prime, the birth of a new hybrid child with unprecedented abilities, and the implications these events have for all our species." As the discussion unfolded, James realized that the future of their family, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance of the decisions made in this room. The silver-skinned being leaned forward, its melodious voice cutting through the debate. "Perhaps," he said, "it is time we considered a more expansive approach to our future as a galactic community." James tensed, sensing the weight of the moment. Whatever came next would shape the course of their lives in ways they had yet to imagine. Imagine. As the transformed moon hung in the view screen, a testament to their newfound abilities, James and Amethyst exchanged a look of wonder and trepidation. Their child, born of energy and stardust, nestled in Amethyst's arms, its tiny form pulsing with an otherworldly glow. In the weeks that followed, preparations for their journey to Genesis Prime consumed the coalition. As the day of departure approached, James found himself standing before the shuttle that would carry his family to their new home. He ran his hand along the smooth hull, marveling at the advanced technology that had been integrated into its systems. "Are we ready?" Amethyst's voice came from behind him, a mix of excitement and nervousness in her tone. James turned to see his mate approaching, Zephyr cradled in her arms. The child, now the size of a human toddler, sparked with blue energy. Aurora and Nova flanked their mother, their eyes wide with anticipation. "As ready as we'll ever be," James replied, offering a reassuring smile. The family boarded the shuttle, settling into their seats as the pre-flight checks began. Commander Zircon's voice crackled over the comm system. "Godspeed, James and Amethyst. We await your safe arrival on Genesis Prime." As the shuttle lifted off, leaving the familiar confines of Harmony Hub behind, James felt a surge of excitement. They were embarking on a new chapter, one filled with unknown possibilities and challenges. Their journey through space was smooth until they entered Genesis Prime's atmosphere. Suddenly, Zephyr's energy began to pulse erratically, causing the shuttle's systems to fluctuate wildly. "James!" Amethyst called out, her voice tight with concern as she struggled to hold on to their rapidly phasing child. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as the shuttle's engines sputtered. James's hands flew over the controls, his enhanced reflexes kicking in as he fought to stabilize their descent. "Hold on!" he shouted, gritting his teeth as he manually guided the craft toward the surface. The shuttle streaked through the sky, leaving a trail of blue energy in its wake. James's muscles strained as he wrestled with the controls, using every ounce of his augmented strength to keep them on course. With a bone-jarring thud, the shuttle touched down on the lush surface of Genesis Prime, skidding to a halt near a cluster of newly constructed Hirogen dwellings. As the dust settled, James released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Is everyone all right?" he asked, turning to check on his family. Amethyst nodded, her arms still wrapped protectively around Zephyr, whose energy had begun to stabilize. Aurora and Nova, looking slightly shaken but unharmed, gave their father a thumbs up. As the shuttle's hatch hissed open, they were greeted by the sight of a transformed world. Lush vegetation in shades of purple and blue stretched as far as the eye could see, punctuated by crystalline formations that sparkled in the alien sunlight. Commander Zircon approached, his exoskeleton gleaming against the backdrop of the alien landscape. "Welcome to Genesis Prime," he said, his mandibles clicking with excitement. "We have much to show you." As they disembarked, Zircon quickly briefed them on recent developments. "The progenitor ruins have become active," he explained, leading them towards a nearby excavation site. "We believe it's reacting to your presence, particularly Zephyr's." As they neared the ruins, James felt a subtle vibration in the air. Zephyr, still in Amethyst's arms, began to glow more intensely. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled, and dormant systems within the ruins flickered to life. "Incredible," Dr. Volkov breathed, her eyes wide as she scanned the awakening technology. "It's as if the entire complex is responding to Zephyr's energy signature." James and Amethyst exchanged a glance, silently acknowledging the weight of this discovery. They followed Zircon and Dr. Volkov into the ruins, marveling at the ancient technology that surrounded them. As they delved deeper into the complex, they encountered a vast chamber filled with devices in various states of preservation. At the center stood a structure that bore an uncanny resemblance to the Nexus, albeit smaller in scale. While the adults focused on examining the ancient technology, Aurora and Nova took charge of Zephyr, whose growth continued at an astonishing rate. Within days, their sibling had developed to the equivalent of a human adolescent, displaying an intuitive understanding of the progenitor technology that left even the most experienced scientists in awe. "Look at this," Zephyr called out, their voice resonating with newfound maturity. The hybrid child's hands danced over a control panel, bringing to life a holographic display filled with complex data. Dr. Volkov rushed over, her eyes widening as she took in the information. This is incredible. It's a database containing information about the progenitor's genetic experiments. As the scientists pored over the newly discovered data, James noticed a change in the Hirogen settlers who had accompanied them into the ruins. Their movements seemed more fluid, their reactions quicker. Commander Zircon approached, his posture straighter than James remembered. "Something is happening to my people," he said, his voice tinged with a mix of awe and concern. "We feel different, stronger, more aware." James nodded, his mind racing with the implications. "It seems your proximity to us, to this technology, is triggering some kind of latent potential in your genetics." As they continued to explore the ruins and uncover more of the progenitor's secrets, James couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The discoveries they were making had the potential to reshape their understanding of not just their own origins, but the very fabric of life in the galaxy. With each passing day, Zephyr's connection to the progenitor technology grew stronger, their ability to interface with the ancient systems surpassing even the most optimistic expectations. But as Zephyr processed ever-increasing amounts of data, James and Amethyst noticed signs of strain in their child. Concerned for Zephyr's well-being and driven by an instinctual need to stabilize their rapidly evolving offspring, James and Amethyst made a decision. They would initiate another mating ritual, this time within the heart of the progenitor ruins. As they prepared for the ritual, James couldn't help but feel that they were standing on the precipice of yet another transformation, one that would not only affect their family, but potentially the entire galaxy. The future stretched before them, full of unknown challenges and possibilities, waiting to be shaped by their actions. Actions. The future stretched before them, full of unknown challenges and possibilities, waiting to be shaped by their unique family. As the energy from their mating ritual coursed through them, James and Amethyst felt a surge of power unlike anything they had experienced before. The progenitor ruins pulsed with an otherworldly light, responding to the intensity of their union. When it was over, they lay breathless, their bodies tingling with newfound energy. James flexed his fingers, feeling an increased strength coursing through his muscles. "Amethyst, are you all right?" She nodded, her bioluminescent patterns shimmering with increased complexity. "I feel different, stronger, more connected to everything around us." As they stood, James noticed his movements were even more fluid and precise than before. Amethyst's skin glowed with intricate, ever-changing patterns that seemed to respond to her thoughts and emotions. A commotion outside drew their attention. They emerged from the ruins to find Commander Zircon and a group of Hirogen settlers gathered near the entrance, their bodies visibly altered. Zircon approached, his exoskeleton gleaming with a new metallic sheen. "James, Amethyst, something has happened to us. We've changed." James studied the Hirogen, noting their increased muscle mass and more alert postures. "It seems the energy from the ritual has affected you as well. How do you feel?" "Stronger, faster," Zircon replied, flexing his newly enhanced limbs. "Our minds feel sharper too. It's as if a fog has lifted." Dr. Volkov rushed over, her eyes wide with excitement. "The data I'm collecting is extraordinary. The genetic changes in the Hirogen population are unprecedented. We need to begin a full-scale study immediately." As they discussed the implications of these changes, Aurora and Nova approached, leading a tall, graceful figure that James barely recognized as Zephyr. "Mom, Dad," Zephyr said, their voice deeper and more assured than before. "I've grown again." Amethyst gasped, taking in the sight of her now adult child. "Zephyr, how do you feel?" Zephyr's form shimmered with scarcely controlled energy. "I feel complete. The progenitor technology, I understand it now in ways I never did before." James placed a hand on Zephyr's shoulder, marveling at the rapid changes. "We'll help you adjust to this, I promise." Suddenly, alarms blared from the research outpost. Dr. Volkov's assistant ran towards them, waving a data pad. "Doctor, you need to see this. We're detecting energy signatures from all over the galaxy." They rushed to the command center, where holographic displays showed pulsing lights scattered across a galactic map. "The energy wave from your ritual," Dr. Volkov explained, her fingers flying over the controls. "It's activated dormant progenitor sites across the galaxy." James and Amethyst exchanged worried glances. "We need to inform the coalition immediately," James said. As they prepared to send the transmission, a low rumble shook the ground. Outside, the lush landscape of Genesis Prime was changing before their eyes. New plant species erupted from the soil, growing at an alarming rate. In the distance, they could hear the calls of unfamiliar creatures. "The ecosystem," Amethyst breathed. "It's evolving even faster now." Commander Zircon barked orders to his troops. "Establish a perimeter around the settlement. We need to secure our people." James nodded. "I'll help. Zircon, we'll use our enhanced abilities to contain any immediate threats." As James and Zircon coordinated their efforts, Amethyst closed her eyes, reaching out with her heightened senses. She could feel the pulse of life around her, the rapid changes in the environment. "I can sense them," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "The new life forms, I can almost communicate with them." Zephyr stepped forward, their eyes glowing with an inner light. "I can help, Mom. Together we might be able to influence their behavior." As mother and child worked to establish a connection with the evolving ecosystem, James and the Hirogen settlers created safe zones around the key areas of the settlement. Hours later, exhausted but successful, they reconvened in the command center. The immediate crisis had been contained, but new challenges loomed on the horizon. Dr. Volkov presented her findings to the group. "The coalition is organizing an expedition to investigate the awakened progenitor sites. They're particularly interested in the coordinates you provided for the dormant fleet." James ran a hand through his hair, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "They'll want us to lead the expedition." Amethyst placed a hand on his arm. "But we're needed here, James. The situation on Genesis Prime is far from stable." Before they could discuss further, a new alert sounded. One of the technicians called out, "Incoming transmission from an unknown source." They gathered around the communications array as a crackling voice filled the room. "Greetings, children of the progenitors. We are like you, created by their wisdom, shaped by their technology. We have felt the awakening. The time has come for us to meet." The room fell silent as the implications of this contact sank in. James looked at Amethyst, then at their children and the diverse group of beings that had become their extended family. "Well," he said, a mix of excitement and trepidation in his voice, "it seems the galaxy has just gotten a lot more interesting." As they began to formulate a response to this new development, James couldn't help but wonder what other surprises the universe had in store for them. The journey that had begun with a chance encounter between a human and an energy being had now expanded far beyond anything they could have imagined. With each new discovery, the future of their family, and perhaps the entire galaxy, continued to evolve in ways they had yet to fully comprehend. As the implications of the mysterious transmission sank in, James and Amethyst exchanged a look of dedication. The galaxy was indeed full of surprises, and they needed to act quickly to address the multiple challenges unfolding before them. "We need to split our efforts," James said, running a hand through his hair. "I'll lead the expedition to awaken the progenitor fleet. Amethyst, you should stay here on Genesis Prime to manage the evolving ecosystem and guide our children's development." Amethyst nodded, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with a mix of concern and purpose. "Agreed. But before you go, we should perform one last mating ritual. It might enhance our abilities further and strengthen our bond." They made their way back to the heart of the progenitor ruins, where they had first experienced the transformative power of their union. As they began the ritual, the ancient technology around them hummed to life, responding to their energy. The intensity of their connection surpassed anything they had experienced before. Waves of power coursed through their bodies, and James felt his mind expanding, reaching out across vast distances. When it was over, he could still sense Amethyst's presence, even as he stood meters away from her. "I can feel you," Amethyst whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's as if you're still right here with me." Outside, the ground trembled as another surge of energy swept across Genesis Prime. New plant species erupted from the soil, their vibrant colors and unusual shapes unlike anything they had seen before. Dr. Volkov burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "You need to see this! The new plants, they're exhibiting extraordinary medicinal properties." As the scientists scrambled to study the latest developments, James began assembling his team for the fleet expedition. Commander Zircon, his exoskeleton now gleaming with an almost liquid metal sheen, volunteered immediately. "My enhanced strength and tactical knowledge could be valuable on this mission," Zircon said, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. Dr. Volkov joined them, along with a diverse group of coalition scientists eager to study the progenitor technology firsthand. They boarded a ship equipped with the latest advancements derived from their recent discoveries. As James prepared to depart, he embraced Amethyst one last time. "Stay safe," he murmured, feeling the strength of their psychic bond. "You too," she replied, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "We'll be waiting for you." The ship lifted off, using the coordinates James and Amethyst had glimpsed during their previous mental link to navigate towards the fleet's location in subspace. Back on Genesis Prime, Amethyst wasted no time. She gathered Zephyr and began exploring the newly discovered subspace corridor network. Their enhanced abilities allowed them to interface directly with the ancient systems, slowly unraveling their complexities. After days of intense work, Zephyr's eyes lit up with excitement. "Mom, I think I've got it!" Their fingers danced over the control panel, and suddenly a section of the network flared to life. Amethyst's breath caught in her throat as she realized the implications. "We've done it! We've reactivated part of the network." The achievement revolutionized communication within the coalition. Messages that once took days to transmit now arrived almost instantaneously between Genesis Prime and several nearby star systems. Meanwhile, James and his team approached the coordinates of the dormant progenitor fleet. As they prepared to enter subspace, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Massive energy field detected," one of the coalition scientists called out. "We can't penetrate it." James closed his eyes, reaching out with his enhanced senses. He could feel the energy barrier, pulsing with an ancient power. Interfacing with the ship's systems, he began to analyze its structure. "It's a security measure," he announced, opening his eyes. "The progenitors put it in place. We need a specific genetic key to deactivate it." As James grappled with this new obstacle, life on Genesis Prime continued to evolve at a breakneck pace. Aurora and Nova found themselves at the forefront of managing the rapidly changing ecosystem. Nova crouched near a patch of newly emerged plants, her hand hovering just above their undulating tendrils. "They're talking to me," she said, wonder filling her voice. "Not with words, but I can sense their needs, their warnings." Aurora nodded, her own attention focused on a cluster of bioluminescent fungi. "Same here. It's like they're part of a vast network, all connected." Their ability to communicate with the new life forms proved crucial in preventing several dangerous mutations from spreading across the moon's surface. As Genesis Prime continued its rapid transformation, the Coalition's permanent scientific installation, now dubbed Nexus Point, became fully operational. Researchers from various species began arriving in droves, eager to study the accelerated evolution process and the practical applications of progenitor technology. The influx of diverse beings created new challenges for the Hirogen settlers. Zircon's second-in-command, Lieutenant Krell, approached Amethyst with concerns. "Our society is changing so rapidly," Krell said, his newly enhanced frame tense with worry. "How do we maintain our identity while adapting to all this change?" Amethyst placed a reassuring hand on Krell's arm. "Change is inevitable, but it doesn't have to erase who you are. We'll work together to find a balance." Light years away, James faced his own set of challenges. Unable to penetrate the energy field surrounding the progenitor fleet, he decided to try a different approach. "Prepare the long-range communication array," he ordered. "Let's see if we can hail the fleet directly." As the message was sent, Tense minutes ticked by. Suddenly, a holographic projection flickered to life before them, revealing a being of pure energy, an ancient progenitor AI. "Greetings, descendants," the AI's voice resonated through the ship. "You have found us, but the journey is not yet complete. To awaken the fleet, you must prove your worth." James stepped forward, his enhanced physiology thrumming with anticipation. "We're ready for whatever tests you have for us." The AI's form shimmered. "Very well. Let the trials begin." As James and his team faced the AI's challenges, pushing the limits of their enhanced abilities, a crisis unfolded back on Genesis Prime. Amethyst received urgent reports of a new predatory species emerging from the rapidly evolving ecosystem. "They're adapting faster than anything we've seen before," a breathless Hydrogen scout reported, "and they seem to possess some kind of collective intelligence." Amethyst's mind raced, reaching out through her deepened connection to the planet's energy. She could sense the new life forms, their hunger, their rapid growth. "Zephyr, Aurora, Nova," she called out. "We need to contain this threat before it overwhelms us." As they rushed to develop a strategy, Amethyst felt a familiar presence touch her mind. James, light years away, but still connected through their bond, sensed her distress. In that moment, as crises unfolded on two fronts, the fate of their family, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The challenges before them would require all of their enhanced abilities, their unwavering dedication, and the strength of the bonds they had forged across the stars. Spans of space. The challenges ahead would test every fiber of their being, pushing them to the limits of their enhanced abilities and the strength of their familial bonds. As James and his team raced back to Genesis Prime, with a small contingent of awakened progenitor ships, urgent updates from Amethyst flooded their communication channels. The situation on the moon had escalated dramatically during their absence. "James, we're facing a critical threat," Amethyst's voice crackled through the ship's speakers, her usual calm demeanor tinged with urgency. "A new predatory species has emerged, unlike anything we've encountered before." James leaned forward, his enhanced senses picking up the subtle undercurrents of stress in Amethyst's voice. "What are we dealing with?" "The research team has dubbed them Adaptoids. They're evolving at an unprecedented rate, and they possess a form of collective intelligence. They've already breached our outer defenses." As the ship entered Genesis Prime's atmosphere, James saw the chaos unfolding below. The once lush alien landscape had transformed into a battleground. Swarms of iridescent creatures moved with eerie coordination, clashing against the Hirogen security forces at the perimeter of the settlement. Upon landing, James wasted no time assembling a crisis management team. Commander Zircon, his exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights of the command center, stood ready with a squad of his most elite warriors. Dr. Volkov and a team of Nexus Point researchers huddled around holographic displays, analyzing data streams from the field. "We need to establish containment zones immediately," James said, his mind racing through potential strategies. "Zircon, deploy your forces to create a defensive perimeter around the most densely populated areas. Dr. Volkov, I need you to analyze the Adaptoid's behavior patterns. Find us a weakness we can exploit." As the team sprang into action, James turned to Amethyst, who had just arrived with Zephyr, Aurora, and Nova. "We'll use the advanced shielding technology from the progenitor ships to set up containment fields. It should buy us some time to formulate a long-term solution." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. James coordinated with the progenitor ship crews to establish a network of energy fields around key areas of the settlement. The shimmering barriers rose into place, temporarily halting the Adaptoid's advance. Amethyst and Zephyr worked tirelessly, interfacing with the colony's systems to track the Adaptoid's movements. As they pored over the data, a pattern began to emerge. "James!" Amethyst called out, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with excitement. "We've discovered something. The Adaptoid's collective intelligence seems to be linked to a central hive mind." Zephyr nodded, manipulating a 3D hologram of Genesis Prime's terrain. "We've traced the source to this location," he said, highlighting a massive pulsating structure in a remote region of the moon. It appears to be some kind of bioluminescent construct. James studied the hologram, his enhanced mind processing the tactical implications. We need to investigate this structure up close. If we can understand how it works, we might find a way to communicate with the adaptoids or even control their behavior. Using the stealth technology from the progenitor ships, James led a small reconnaissance team to the hive structure. As they approached, the air thrummed with an otherworldly energy. The structure itself was a marvel of organic architecture, its crystalline spires pulsing with an inner light that seemed to beat in rhythm with the swarms of adaptoids circling overhead. James and Amethyst, their abilities heightened by their recent mating ritual, reached out with their minds toward the hive. At first, they encountered only chaos, a maelstrom of primal instincts and fragmented thoughts. But as they pushed deeper, a form of rudimentary communication began to take shape. "They're not inherently hostile," Amethyst gasped, her eyes wide with realization. "They're afraid, confused. This environment is as alien to them as they are to us." James nodded, feeling the truth of her words resonate through their shared mental link. "They're acting on pure survival instinct. We've been thinking about this all wrong. We don't need to contain them. We need to help them adapt in a way that doesn't threaten our own survival." As they relayed their findings back to the crisis team, Dr. Volkov made a startling connection. "The Adaptoid's rapid evolution," she explained, her voice brimming with scientific excitement, "it's likely a result of exposure to the residual energy from your mating rituals in the progenitor ruins." Her fingers flew over a console, bringing up a series of complex equations. "I believe we can stabilize their evolution by creating a controlled energy field that mimics the effects of the mating ritual. But to generate enough power, we'll need you and Amethyst to perform another ritual within a specially constructed chamber." James and Amethyst exchanged glances, the weight of the decision hanging between them. The risks were enormous, but the potential reward, a peaceful coexistence with the Adaptoids, was too great to ignore. "We'll do it," James said firmly. As preparations for the ritual began, a new complication arose. A message from the Coalition flashed across the command center's main screen. The group of genetically compatible species they had contacted earlier had dispatched an envoy to Genesis Prime. Their arrival was imminent. With time running short, the hybrid family and their allies worked around the clock to construct the energy chamber. Using a combination of progenitor and coalition technology, they positioned it near the Adaptoid hive structure, hoping to maximize its effect. James and Amethyst entered the chamber, their bodies humming with nervous energy. As they began the mating ritual, waves of power surged through the specially designed conduits, amplifying and directing the energy across Genesis Prime. Outside, the effect was immediate and stunning. The Adaptoids' frenzied movements began to slow, their forms shifting and stabilizing before the astonished eyes of the colonists. The massive hive structure pulsed in sync with the energy waves, its crystalline spires refracting the light in mesmerizing patterns. Aurora, Nova, and Zephyr, working with a team of researchers, used the subspace corridor network to broadcast a modified version of the energy pattern across the moon. The stabilizing effect rippled outward, reaching even the most distant Adaptoid populations. As the ritual reached its climax, a final massive surge of energy washed over Genesis Prime. The Adaptoids underwent a visible transformation, their once chaotic forms settling into more stable, less aggressive configurations. The hive mind structure glowed brilliantly, now pulsing in perfect harmony with the moon's natural rhythms. Exhausted but triumphant, James and Amethyst emerged from the chamber to find Genesis Prime transformed. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but the work of building a true coexistence with the Adaptoids was just beginning. As the family gathered at Nexus Point to welcome the arriving envoy from the genetically compatible species, James couldn't help but marvel at the incredible journey that had led them to this moment. The stabilized ecosystem, the awakened progenitor fleet, and now the prospect of new allies, all of it pointed to a future filled with both immense challenges and boundless possibilities. The alien ship descended through Genesis Prime's atmosphere, its sleek form catching the light of the system's twin suns. As it touched down on the landing pad, James felt Amethyst's hand slip into his, their fingers intertwining. Whatever came next, they would face it together, as a family and as part of something far greater than themselves. As the alien ship touched down on the specially prepared landing pad, James felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness course through him. He gave Amethyst's hand a gentle squeeze, drawing strength from their connection. The ship's sleek design caught the light of Genesis Prime's twin suns, its metallic surface shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. As the hatch opened with a soft hiss, James and Amethyst stepped forward, ready to greet their new allies. What emerged from the ship took their breath away. A group of tall, bioluminescent beings with elongated limbs and shimmering skin stepped out, their every movement a mesmerizing dance of light and color. At the forefront stood their leader, a being of such imposing stature that James had to crane his neck to meet her gaze. "Welcome to Genesis Prime," James said, his voice steady despite his awe. "I am James, and this is my mate, Amethyst. We're honored to receive you." The leader of the envoy, towering at nearly 3 meters tall, inclined her head in acknowledgement. "I am Ambassador Lyra of the Lumini. We are grateful for your invitation and eager to begin our discussions." As Lyra spoke, intricate patterns of light danced across her skin, creating a dazzling display that seemed to complement her words. James noticed Amethyst's fascination with the phenomenon, her own bioluminescent patterns flickering in response. The welcoming ceremony proceeded, but it quickly became apparent that the Nexus Point facilities were ill-equipped to handle beings of the Lumini's stature. Ambassador Lyra ducked to avoid low-hanging light fixtures, and her elongated limbs made navigating the narrow corridors a challenge. "Perhaps we should move our meeting to a more open area," James suggested, trying to mask his embarrassment at the oversight. "We have a beautiful garden terrace that might be more comfortable for everyone." As they made their way to the terrace, James couldn't help but notice the comical situations arising from the Lumine's height. Ambassador Lyra accidentally bumped her head on a doorframe, eliciting a surprised yelp that sounded more like a musical note than an exclamation of pain. The incident, while initially awkward, seemed to break the ice between the two groups. Once settled on the terrace, James proposed using a modified version of progenitor technology to establish a direct neural interface, hoping to bridge the communication gap caused by the Lumini's unique bioluminescent language. "It's a fascinating idea," Dr. Volkov chimed in, her eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. "We could potentially adapt the technology we used during the Adaptoid crisis to facilitate this interface." As preparations for the neural link began, James and Amethyst led the Lumini delegation on a tour of Nexus Point and the surrounding area. The sight of the towering aliens trying to squeeze into standard ground vehicles drew amused glances from human and Hirogen colonists alike. Their tour took them past the massive bioluminescent structure housing the Adaptoid hive mind. Ambassador Lyra's skin pulsed with intense patterns of light as she observed the construct. "Fascinating," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "We face similar challenges with rapidly evolving life forms on our own world. There may be more connecting our experiences than we initially thought." As night fell on Genesis Prime, the bioluminescent glow of the Lumini intensified, creating a breathtaking display that captivated everyone present. Suddenly, the Adaptoid hive structure began to pulse in sync with the Lumini's light patterns, its crystalline spires refracting the light in mesmerizing ways. Dr. Volkov, who had been monitoring the Adaptoid activity, rushed over to James and Amethyst. "This is unprecedented," she exclaimed, her words tumbling out in a rush of excitement. "The Lumini's bioluminescent communication seems to be triggering a response from the Adaptoid hive mind. We need to study this phenomenon immediately." As the group returned to Nexus Point, James and Amethyst faced a new challenge: finding suitable accommodations for their towering guests. The standard quarters assigned to Ambassador Lyra were clearly inadequate, barely allowing her to stand upright. "We'll need to get creative," James mused, his mind racing through potential solutions. "Amethyst, what if we repurposed one of the larger research bays? With some quick modifications, we could make it comfortable for the Lumini delegation. Amethyst nodded, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with persistence. I'll work with the engineering team to design and fabricate custom furniture. We can repurpose materials from the progenitor ships to meet their needs. As James oversaw the hasty conversion of the research bay, Amethyst coordinated with the engineering team, adapting coalition technology to create beds, chairs, and workstations suitable for the Luminae's unique physiology. The following day, as final preparations for the neural interface neared completion, an unexpected solar flare hit Genesis Prime. The surge of radiation interacted with the moon's newly stabilized ecosystem, causing a temporary disruption of electronic systems across Nexus Point. The timing couldn't have been worse. James, Amethyst, and Ambassador Lyra had just initiated the neural interface when the solar flare hit. The combination of the flare's energy and the active interface created an unforeseen reaction, amplifying the psychic bond between James and Amethyst while establishing a rudimentary connection with Lyra. In that moment, James and Amethyst were flooded with sensory information from Lyra's perspective. Visions of the Luminae's homeworld, their long search for other progenitor-created species, and the challenges they had faced flashed through their minds in a dizzying array of images and emotions. Simultaneously, Lyra experienced flashes of James and Amethyst's lives on Genesis Prime. She saw their mating rituals, felt the raw power of their connection, and witnessed the recent stabilization of the Adaptoid species. As the neural interface stabilized and the trio regained their composure, they became aware of a profound connection between their species. The Luminae's natural bioluminescence seemed to resonate with the energy patterns produced during James and Amethyst's mating rituals, hinting at a potential for unprecedented cooperation and advancement. Ambassador Lyra, her skin pulsing with excited patterns of light, turned to James and Amethyst with an expression of wonder. "I believe we have stumbled upon something truly extraordinary," she said, her voice filled with awe. "There is a compatibility between our species that goes beyond mere genetics. I have a proposal that may change the course of our collective futures." James and Amethyst exchanged glances, sensing the weight of the moment. Whatever Lyra was about to suggest, they knew it would have far-reaching implications for all of them, and potentially for the entire galaxy. Galaxy. James took a deep breath, steadying himself for whatever was to come. "We're listening, Ambassador," he said, his voice calm but filled with curiosity. Ambassador Lyra's skin pulsed with intricate patterns of light as she spoke. "Our species share a unique connection, one that goes beyond mere genetic compatibility. I propose we explore this connection further through an interspecies mating ritual." James and Amethyst exchanged surprised glances, their minds racing with the implications of Lyra's suggestion. The idea was unprecedented, potentially revolutionary, and not without risks. "Such a ritual could unlock new avenues of understanding between our species," Amethyst said, her own bioluminescent patterns flickering with excitement. Dr. Volkov, who had been monitoring the conversation, stepped forward. "From a scientific standpoint, this could yield invaluable data on interspecies compatibility and energy transfer. However, we'd need to approach this with utmost caution. Over the next few days, preparations for the interspecies mating ritual began in earnest. James and Amethyst worked tirelessly with Dr. Volkov and a team of xenobiologists to design a safe, controlled environment for the event. They chose a large hangar at Nexus Point, converting it into a specialized chamber equipped with advanced monitoring systems and energy field generators. Ambassador Lyra selected 2 Luminae volunteers to participate alongside James and Amethyst. Zephyros, a male with swirling patterns of blue and green across his skin, and Aura, a female whose bioluminescence shimmered in soft gold and pink hues. As the 4 participants underwent extensive medical examinations and genetic compatibility tests, word of the planned ritual spread throughout the coalition. Not everyone was supportive of the idea. A group of conservative coalition members began organizing protests outside Nexus Point, their voices rising in opposition. "This goes against the natural order," one protester shouted, waving a sign that read, "Preserve species integrity." James watched the growing crowd from a window, his brow furrowed with concern. "We need to address their concern," he said to Amethyst. "This experiment has the potential to change everything. We can't ignore the ethical implications." Heeding James's advice, they convened a panel of experts from various fields to debate the potential risks and benefits of the experiment. After hours of intense discussion, the panel concluded that the potential scientific advancements outweighed the risks, provided strict safety protocols were followed. As the day of the ritual approached, Genesis Prime experienced a series of minor seismic disturbances. Dr. Volkov's team traced the source to the Adaptoid hive mind structure, which pulsed with intensifying bioluminescent patterns. "It's as if the entire moon is reacting to the upcoming ritual," Dr. Volkov mused, studying the data streaming across her screens. On the morning of the ritual, James, Amethyst, Zephyros, and Aura entered the specially prepared chamber. The room was bathed in a soft, pulsating light that matched the natural bioluminescence of the lumini. As the doors sealed behind them, James felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation course through him. The ritual began slowly, each species demonstrating their unique mating behaviors. The luminae's elongated limbs moved in graceful, undulating motions, their skin creating intricate patterns of light that danced across the chamber. James and Amethyst responded instinctively, their hybrid physiology adapting to the unfamiliar energy surrounding them. As the ritual progressed, the energy field generators activated, creating a controlled environment that amplified the participants' natural energies. James felt a tingling sensation spread across his skin, his body beginning to emit a subtle glow that intensified with each passing moment. The chamber filled with a kaleidoscope of colors and pulsing energies as the four beings intertwined. James's mind expanded, touching the consciousness of the others in ways he had never experienced before. He saw flashes of the Lumini homeworld, felt the vastness of space through their perception, and sensed the ancient connection that linked all progenitor-created species. As the ritual reached its climax, a powerful surge of energy coursed through the chamber. The monitoring systems overloaded, screens flickering and alarms blaring in the adjacent control room. Dr. Volkov and her team worked frantically to maintain control of the situation. Inside the chamber, James felt the energy wave wash over him, its power unlike anything he had ever experienced. His body tingled with newfound sensations, his hybrid abilities temporarily boosted to unprecedented levels. Beside him, Amethyst's bioluminescent patterns blazed with intensity, her form seeming to shimmer between solid and energy states. The Lumini participants, Zephyros and Aura, were equally affected. Their elongated bodies pulsed with new patterns of light, colors shifting and blending in ways that had never been observed in their species before. As the energy wave extended beyond the confines of Nexus Point, spreading across Genesis Prime, the effects were immediately apparent. The Adaptoid hive mind structure pulsed in sync with the energy, its crystalline spires refracting light in mesmerizing patterns. Across the moon's surface, new growths of bioluminescent flora began to sprout, transforming the landscape in a matter of hours. In the aftermath of the ritual, medical teams rushed to examine the participants. Initial scans revealed subtle but significant changes in their physiology. James and Amethyst found their hybrid abilities enhanced, their connection to each other and their surroundings more acute than ever before. Zephyros and Aura displayed new patterns of bioluminescence, their bodies adapting in ways that amazed even their own scientists. As news of the ritual's apparent success spread, the coalition faced a new challenge. Requests from other species within the alliance began pouring in, each hoping to unlock their own evolutionary potential through similar experiments. The coalition leadership found themselves scrambling to develop new policies and guidelines for interspecies genetic experimentation. Meanwhile, high above Genesis Prime, the awakened progenitor ships detected the energy surge from the ritual. Ancient systems hummed to life, analyzing the data and comparing it to records from the original progenitor experiments. As the ships powered up additional systems, they began transmitting signals into deep space, their purpose yet unknown. James stood at the observation deck of Nexus Point, watching as the landscape of Genesis Prime continued to transform. New species of bioluminescent plants spread across previously barren areas, their soft glow visible even from orbit. The Adaptoid structures pulsed with renewed vigor, their forms evolving to better integrate with the moon's changing ecosystem. As he contemplated the far-reaching consequences of their actions, a notification chimed on his comm device. Dr. Volkov's voice came through, urgent and filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "James, you need to see this," she said. "Long-range sensors have detected multiple objects entering the outer reaches of the Genesis system. Initial scans suggest they're ships of unknown origin." James's heart raced as he processed the information. The interspecies mating ritual had opened doors they never imagined possible, but it had also sent ripples across the cosmos. As he prepared to gather the coalition leadership to address this new development, he couldn't help but wonder, were these unknown ships drawn by the signals from the awakened progenitor vessels? And if so, what new challenges or opportunities did they bring? James's mind raced with possibilities and potential threats as he turned away from the observation deck. "Understood, Doctor. I'm on my way," he replied, his voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline coursing through him. As James made his way to the command center, alarms blared throughout Nexus Point. The Coalition's emergency protocols kicked into high gear, with security personnel and scientists rushing to their designated stations. The atmosphere crackled with tension and anticipation. Amethyst met James at the entrance to the command center, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with a mix of excitement and concern. "I heard about the unknown ships," she said, falling into step beside him. "What do you think we're dealing with?" Before James could respond, they entered the bustling command center. Dr. Volkov stood at the central holographic display, her face illuminated by the swirling images of the Genesis system. She looked up as James and Amethyst approached. "Ah, good, you're here," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "We've got multiple unidentified objects entering the system. Initial scans suggest they're of unknown origin, but there's something familiar about their energy signatures." James studied the holographic display, his enhanced senses picking up subtle details that might have escaped him before the interspecies mating ritual. The unknown ships appeared as a cluster of pulsing lights, their formation tightly organized as they moved through the outer reaches of the system. "Have we attempted communication?" James asked, his eyes never leaving the display. Dr. Volkov shook her head. "Not yet. We wanted to wait for your input before making first contact. Given your unique experiences with multiple species, the Coalition leadership believes you and Amethyst should lead the first contact team." Amethyst's skin flickered with a pattern that James recognized as a mix of surprise and perseverance. "Us? But we're still recovering from the ritual. Are you sure we're the best choice?" "Precisely because of the ritual," Dr. Volkov explained. "Your enhanced abilities and newfound connection to other species make you uniquely qualified for this situation." As they discussed the situation, a junior scientist approached with a datapad. "Dr. Volkov, you need to see this," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "We're detecting significant changes in the Adaptoid structures." The holographic display shifted to show a real-time feed of the Adaptoid hive mind structure. The crystalline spires pulsed with an intensity that James had never seen before, their bioluminescent patterns shifting in complex, almost hypnotic sequences. "It's as if they're responding to the approaching ships," Amethyst murmured, her own bioluminescence unconsciously synchronizing with the Adaptoid patterns. Dr. Volkov quickly assembled a research team to study this new development. "We need to understand what's happening with the Adaptoids," she said. "It could be crucial to our interactions with these unknown visitors." As the command center buzzed with activity, Ambassador Lyra entered, accompanied by Zephyros and Aura. The three Lumini moved with a grace that seemed even more fluid than before, their skins shimmering with intricate patterns that James found he could almost understand. "We've been briefed on the situation," Lyra said, her voice carrying a new depth of resonance. "The Lumini are prepared to offer any assistance we can in this first contact scenario." James nodded, grateful for their support. "Thank you, Ambassador. We may need your expertise in interpreting any unfamiliar communication methods." As they strategized, the Coalition's defensive system sprang to life. The newly awakened progenitor ships, guided by a combination of their ancient programming and the Coalition's commands, moved into a protective formation around Genesis Prime. Hours passed as the unknown fleet drew closer. James and Amethyst underwent a series of briefings and preparations, their bodies still humming with the residual energy from the interspecies mating ritual. Despite the potential danger, James couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This could be the moment that changed everything. Suddenly, the command center erupted into a flurry of activity. "We're receiving a transmission," a communications officer shouted. It's using an ancient progenitor protocol." The holographic display flickered and grit into a new image. A message scrolled across the screen, the language a complex blend of symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and evolve as they watched. Dr. Volkov's eyes widened as she read the translation. "They're calling themselves the Cynthians," she announced, her voice filled with wonder. "They say they're another species created by the progenitors, and they're requesting permission to approach Genesis Prime peacefully." James and Amethyst exchanged glances, their enhanced connection allowing them to share a moment of silent communication. This was it, the moment that would define the future of not just Genesis Prime, but potentially the entire galaxy. "Prepare a response," James said, his voice firm with dedication. "Tell them we're open to peaceful contact. Amethyst and I will lead a delegation to meet them at a safe distance from Genesis Prime." As the coalition scrambled to prepare for this unprecedented encounter, James couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The interspecies mating ritual had opened doors they never imagined possible, and now, as they prepared to face these Cynthians, he realized that their journey of discovery was a long way to go. With a deep breath, James turned to Amethyst. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his hand finding hers. Amethyst's skin pulsed with a pattern that conveyed both nervousness and excitement. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied. "Let's go make history." Together, they made their way to the docking bay, where one of the awakened progenitor ships awaited, its ancient systems humming with renewed purpose. As they boarded, James cast one last look at Genesis Prime, its surface now a tapestry of bioluminescent life. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that the experiences and connections forged on this transformed moon would guide them through the uncertain future. As James and Amethyst boarded the progenitor ship, the command center erupted with urgent activity. Alarms blared, and technicians scrambled to their stations. "We've got a situation," Dr. Volkov's voice crackled over the intercom. "The Cynthian shuttle is merging with the landing pad." James and Amethyst exchanged a look of disbelief before rushing back to the observation deck. Below, a bizarre spectacle unfolded. The sleek Cynthian vessel seemed to melt into the metallic surface of the landing pad, its biomechanical components intertwining with the station's infrastructure. "Containment protocols, now!" James ordered, his enhanced senses allowing him to perceive the subtle energy fluctuations emanating from the merged area. Dr. Volkov's team sprang into action, deploying force fields and energy barriers around the affected zone. The air crackled with ionized particles as the containment measures took effect. "We need to study this phenomenon up close," Amethyst said, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with intensity. "Our hybrid physiology might allow us to interact safely with the merged area." James nodded, recognizing the unique opportunity their enhanced abilities presented. "Agreed. Let's suit up and get down there." As they donned protective gear, Ambassador Lyra approached, her elongated form moving with fluid grace. "This integration of Cynthian technology presents both challenge and opportunity," she said, her voice resonating with newfound depth. "I propose we create a controlled environment to study its compatibility with our diverse species." The idea quickly gained traction among the coalition leadership. Within hours, a specialized chamber was constructed within Nexus Point, incorporating elements from all participating species. James, Amethyst, Zephyros, Aura, and the Cynthian envoy Xylox volunteered for the experiment. As they entered the chamber, James felt a tingling sensation course through his body. The air seemed charged with potential, and he could sense the subtle interplay of energies between the various technological components. "Remember, we're monitoring your vital signs constantly," Dr. Volkov's voice came through their comms. "If anything feels off, say the word and we'll extract you immediately." The 5 volunteers spread out, each approaching a different section of the chamber. James placed his hand on a console that pulsed with progenitor energy. Instantly, he felt a surge of information flood his consciousness. His fingers began to tingle, and he watched in amazement as thin, silvery filaments began to emerge from his skin, interfacing directly with the technology. Beside him, Amethyst gasped as her bioluminescent patterns flared with unprecedented brilliance. She raised her hand, and the light danced and shifted in response to her thoughts. Zephyros and Aura moved with newfound fluidity, their elongated limbs bending and twisting in ways that defied their normal physiology. They effortlessly interfaced with both organic and mechanical systems, their bodies adapting to each new stimulus. Envoy Xylox underwent the most visible transformation. Their metallic exoskeleton softened, taking on a more organic texture. James watched in fascination as Xylox's sensors extended, becoming more antenna-like and sensitive. As the experiment progressed, James became aware of a growing connection between the participants. It started as a faint empathic link, a vague sense of shared emotion. But as their bodies continued to adapt and synchronize, the link strengthened. Suddenly, a flood of images and sensations washed over James. He saw distant stars, strange worlds, and glimpses of technologies beyond his comprehension. Through the link, he realized the others were experiencing the same vision. The Cynthians, Xylox's voice echoed in their shared consciousness. We carry the knowledge of other progenitor creations, scattered across the galaxy, waiting to be awakened. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. As they processed this new information, alarms began to blare outside. The Adaptoid structure, Dr. Volkov's voice cut through their shared trance. It's emitting complex energy patterns that resonate with the chamber. We're detecting unprecedented levels of activity. James felt the ground beneath them tremble. Through the viewing ports, he could see the crystalline spires of the Adaptoid hive mind pulsing with intense light. The patterns seemed to dance in sync with the energies swirling within the chamber. As the tremors intensified, James made a split-second decision. We need to channel this energy, he said, his voice carrying the weight of newfound authority. If we can integrate it with the progenitor fleet, we might unlock their full potential. The others nodded in agreement, their shared empathic link allowing for instant understanding and coordination. Together, they focused their enhanced abilities, becoming living conduits for the surging energies. Outside the chamber, the Coalition's engineering teams worked feverishly to implement the integration. The awakened progenitor ships hummed with renewed purpose as Cynthian biomechanical components merged with their ancient systems. As the last connections were made, a massive energy surge rippled through Genesis Prime. The enhanced long-range sensors of Nexus Point lit up, detecting a distant but powerful signal from the depths of space. Another ritual, Amethyst whispered, her eyes wide with realization. But on a scale we can hardly imagine. James nodded, feeling the weight of their discovery. We need to investigate, he said, looking at each of his fellow volunteers. Whatever's happening out there, it's changing the course of galactic evolution. We have to understand it. As they emerged from the chamber, their bodies forever altered by the experience, James knew that their journey was just the beginning. The Genesis Voyager awaited, its systems now a perfect fusion of all their combined technologies. The Coalition quickly assembled a diverse crew, representing every species involved in their unprecedented alliance. As final preparations were made, James and Amethyst stood at the helm of the Genesis Voyager, ready to embark on a mission that would take them into the unknown reaches of space. Just as they were about to depart, another series of tremors shook Genesis Prime. The Adaptoid structure pulsed with blinding intensity, and for a moment, all communication systems went dark. When they came back online, James felt a new sense of urgency. Whatever forces they had set in motion, they were accelerating beyond their control. As the Genesis Voyager lifted off, leaving the transformed landscape of Genesis Prime behind, James couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time itself. The stars stretched into streaks of light as the ship entered hyperspace, carrying its crew towards a destiny that would reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. Universe. As the Genesis Voyager surged through hyperspace, James felt a sudden jolt. The ship's advanced sensors flashed urgent warnings, pulling them out of faster-than-light travel. Anomaly detected in the nearby asteroid belt, reported the ship's AI. Energy signatures match those produced during interspecies mating rituals. James exchanged a quick glance with Amethyst. Change of plans, he announced to the crew. We're investigating this before proceeding to the distant energy surge. The Genesis Voyager approached a massive, irregularly shaped asteroid. As they drew closer, faint pulses of energy became visible, emanating from within the rocky surface. It's like the asteroid is alive, Amethyst murmured, her bioluminescent patterns shifting in response to the energy waves. James nodded, his enhanced senses picking up subtle vibrations. We need to get a closer look. Prepare a landing party. Within minutes, James and Amethyst led a small team to the asteroid's surface. Using their newly acquired abilities, they interfaced with what appeared to be an ancient access panel. The rock face shimmered and parted, revealing a hidden progenitor outpost. As they ventured inside, the facility hummed to life, responding to their presence. Holographic displays flickered into existence, showing schematics of long-forgotten experiments. This place, it's incredible, breathed Dr. Volkov, her eyes wide as she took in the advanced technology surrounding them. James approached a central console, his fingers tingling as he made contact. Information flooded his mind, overwhelming at first, then coalescing into coherent data streams. This outpost was designed for long-term observation, he reported, but there's something else. Before he could elaborate, a low rumble shook the facility. A previously hidden section of the wall slid open, revealing a massive stasis pod. Energy crackled around its surface as ancient systems initiated an awakening sequence. Everyone, stand back, James ordered, positioning himself between the team and the pod. With a hiss of escaping gases, the pod's seal broke. A towering figure emerged, unfolding to a height of over 4 meters. Bioluminescent patterns danced across its skin, pulsing with otherworldly energy. The being's eyes, each the size of a human fist, slowly focused on the exploration team. When it spoke, its voice resonated through their bodies. I am Zara, of the progenitors. How long have I slumbered? James stepped forward, fighting the urge to gawk at the immense being. Zara, I'm James. We're the results of your species experiments. It's been a very long time. Zara's expression shifted, a mix of confusion and wonder. She attempted to move but stumbled, her massive form ill-suited to the outpost corridors. The galaxy, it has changed. I sense it. Show me. James quickly realized the logistical challenge Zara's size presented. We'll need to return to our ship, he said. It's better equipped to accommodate you. The journey back to the Genesis Voyager was a delicate operation. Zara's every movement threatened to damage the outpost structures. Once aboard the ship, her presence caused immediate reactions in the vessel's hybrid systems. Biomechanical components writhed and reconfigured, adapting to Zara's unique energy signature. Fascinating, Zara murmured, observing the ship's transformations. Your technology, it bears similarities to our designs, yet it's evolved beyond our original concepts. As they set course back to Genesis Prime, James made a difficult decision. We'll have to postpone our mission to the distant energy surge, he announced to the crew. This discovery takes precedence. During the journey, Zara struggled to acclimate to the changed galactic landscape. She peppered the crew with questions, her ancient knowledge clashing with the realities of their evolved universe. Upon reaching Genesis Prime, Zara's arrival caused a flurry of activity. Existing facilities at Nexus Point were woefully inadequate for her size. Engineers scrambled to modify a section of the progenitor ruins, creating a temporary living space that merged ancient technology with modern adaptations. An emergency coalition meeting was convened to address the implications of Zara's awakening. Representatives from all species gathered, their faces a mix of awe and apprehension as Zara towered over them. The interspecies mating experiments were part of a grand design, Zara revealed, her voice echoing through the chamber. We sought to create a unified, highly adaptive species capable of facing unknown cosmic challenges. Her words sent ripples of excitement and concern through the assembly. Zara continued, outlining a bold plan to accelerate their evolution through a large-scale mating ritual involving all present species, including herself. The Adaptoid hive mind structure, she explained, gesturing towards the crystalline spires visible through the viewport, can amplify the effects across the entire Genesis system. The proposal ignited intense debate. Some coalition members saw it as the fulfillment of the progenitor's vision, while others voiced concerns about the risks and ethical implications. James and Amethyst, drawing on their experiences, advocated for a cautious approach. "We should start with smaller-scale experiments," James suggested. "We don't fully understand the potential consequences of a system-wide event." As discussions continued, alarms blared throughout Nexus Point. The Adaptoid hive mind structure had begun to change, extending glowing tendrils towards key locations on Genesis Prime. Dr. Volkov's voice cut through the chaos. "The structure is reacting to Zara's presence. It's attempting to establish a direct connection with her." The coalition, faced with this new development, reached a compromise. They would proceed with a modified version of Zara's plan, conducting a series of controlled mating rituals in specially constructed chambers, mimicking the Adaptoid structure's properties. Construction began immediately at key locations across Genesis Prime. Engineers worked tirelessly, integrating Cynthian and progenitor technology to create chambers capable of accommodating participants of all sizes, including the towering Zara. As the first ritual approached, James and Amethyst underwent additional genetic treatments to ensure compatibility with Zara and other participants. The procedures triggered further mutations in their hybrid physiology, enhancing their adaptability to different biological and energy patterns. The day of the first ritual arrived. James, Amethyst, Zara, and representatives from the Lumini, Cynthian, and Adaptoid species gathered at the Nexus Point chamber. As they entered, the air hummed with potential energy. James took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He looked at Amethyst, her skin pulsing with anticipation, then at the imposing figure of Zara. As the chamber's energy field activated, their bodies began to glow with intricate bioluminescent patterns. The unprecedented interspecies mating ritual had begun, promising to reshape the genetic future of all involved species. As the energy swirled around them, James couldn't help but wonder what transformations awaited them on the other side of this cosmic experiment. As their bodies began to glow with intricate bioluminescent patterns, James felt a rush of energy coursing through him. The air in the chamber crackled with intensity as the ritual commenced. James and Amethyst, drawing on their previous experiences, took the lead in guiding the other participants through the initial stages. Their movements were fluid and purposeful, creating a harmonious dance of energy and light. Zara, however, struggled to fully integrate into the ritual. Her immense size made it difficult for her to interact with the other participants. Noticing this, James quickly signaled to the engineering team outside the chamber. Within moments, the chamber began to transform. The ceiling extended upwards, and a raised platform materialized beneath Zara's feet. This real-time modification allowed the progenitor to comfortably engage with the others, her massive form now perfectly aligned with the swirling energies. As the ritual progressed, James noticed startling changes occurring to his body. Patches of his skin began to emit a soft, pulsating glow, reminiscent of the Lumini's bioluminescence. He glanced at Amethyst and saw that her hair had taken on a life of its own, moving independently like the tentacle-like appendages of the Cynthians. The Lumini representatives, Zephyrus and Aura, underwent their own transformations. Their typically towering forms shrank, allowing them to interact more intimately with the human-sized participants. The sight of these rapid changes sent a thrill of excitement through James. Outside the chamber, alarms began to blare. The monitoring equipment detected a massive surge of energy emanating from the Adaptoid hive mind structure. Through the chamber's transparent walls, James could see the structure pulsing in perfect synchronization with the rhythm of their mating ritual. The energy within the chamber intensified, creating a swirling vortex of light and color that engulfed the participants. James felt a moment of panic as he realized the containment systems were failing. The energy field expanded rapidly, breaching the chamber walls and spreading outward. In a matter of seconds, the field had enveloped all of Nexus Point. James watched in awe as it continued to grow, eventually encompassing the entire moon. The Coalition's defense system sprang to life, creating a protective barrier around Genesis Prime to prevent the energy field from affecting the rest of the solar system. As the ritual reached its crescendo, James experienced a profound sense of connection with every participant. He could feel the genetic information flowing between them, reshaping their very essence. The chamber was filled with a cacophony of sounds, gasps, moans, and cries of ecstasy, as each being underwent their unique transformation. When the energy finally dissipated, James stumbled out of the chamber, his body forever altered. He looked down at his hands, watching in amazement as they shifted from organic to biomechanical and back again. With a thought, he could change his size, growing to match Zara's towering height or shrinking to the size of a Cynthian. Amethyst emerged beside him, her skin now adorned with intricate shifting patterns of light. They exchanged a look of wonder, realizing they could communicate without words, using complex bioluminescent signals. The scene outside the chamber was one of chaos and marvel. The bioluminescent flora that had emerged after previous experiments was now growing at an exponential rate, spreading across Genesis Prime's surface. New species of plants and animals seemed to spontaneously evolve before their eyes, adapting to the rapidly changing environment. In the distance, James could see the Hyrogen settlement transforming. Buildings stretched and morphed, adapting to accommodate the various physiologies of all species present on the moon. The merged area where the Cynthian shuttle had integrated with the landing pad was expanding, creating a network of biomechanical pathways that connected key locations across the moon's surface. A series of bright flashes in the sky caught James' attention. The upgraded progenitor ships in orbit were reacting to the energy surge, their biomechanical components reconfiguring in real time. The ship's AI systems reported the development of new features, including improved faster-than-light travel capabilities and advanced terraforming modules. As the initial shock of their transformations began to wear off, James and Amethyst were summoned to an emergency meeting of the Coalition leadership. Reports were flooding in of similar energy surges and evolutionary leaps occurring in other star systems, suggesting that the effects of their ritual had spread further than anyone had anticipated. Dr. Volkov burst into the meeting room, her eyes wide with excitement. "The Adaptoid hive mind structure is emitting a new signal," she announced breathlessly. "It contains data about the location of other progenitor outposts and potentially compatible species across the galaxy." The implications of this discovery were staggering. It aligned perfectly with the knowledge shared by Zara and the Cynthians, providing a roadmap for further exploration and integration on a galactic scale. As the Coalition leaders debated their next move, James and Amethyst exchanged a knowing look. They understood that their unique experiences and newly enhanced abilities made them the ideal candidates to lead the next phase of the mission. Within hours, the decision was made. James and Amethyst would head a diplomatic mission to the nearest identified progenitor outpost. As they made their way to the launch pad where the Genesis Voyager awaited, James marveled at how far they had come in such a short time. The flagship had undergone its own transformation, fully integrated with the latest hybrid technology. Its sleek hull now pulsed with the same bioluminescent patterns that adorned James and Amethyst's skin. As they boarded the ship, James felt a surge of anticipation. The events on Genesis Prime had set in motion changes that would reshape the future of all involved species. He knew that the journey ahead would bring new challenges and discoveries, pushing the boundaries of interspecies cooperation and evolution even further. The Genesis Voyager's engines hummed to life, a perfect fusion of Cynthian, progenitor, and Adaptoid technology. As the ship lifted off, leaving the transformed landscape of Genesis Prime behind, James couldn't help but wonder what new wonders awaited them in the vast expanse of the galaxy. As the Genesis Voyager ascended through the atmosphere, James felt a sudden tremor beneath his feet. He turned to Amethyst, concern etched on his face. "Something's not right," he said, his bioluminescent patterns flashing with unease. Before Amethyst could respond, an urgent transmission crackled through the ship's communication system. Dr. Volkov's voice, tinged with alarm, filled the bridge. "James, Amethyst, you need to return immediately. The Adaptoid structure, it's expanding at an unprecedented rate." Without hesitation, James initiated the landing sequence. The Genesis Voyager, responsive to their thoughts, smoothly altered its trajectory and descended back towards Genesis Prime's surface. As they approached, the transformation below became apparent. Massive tendrils of bioluminescent material snaked across the moon's landscape, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. The once familiar terrain had become an alien tapestry of light and motion. James and Amethyst disembarked, their bodies instinctively shifting to accommodate the changed environment. James grew to the size of a small building, surveying the expansive changes, while Amethyst shrank to examine the microscopic alterations in the soil. "The genetic mutations are accelerating," Amethyst reported, her voice resonating through their newfound telepathic link. "The flora and fauna, they're evolving before our eyes." James watched as a nearby cluster of plants morphed, their leaves taking on the iridescent quality of luminized skin. In the distance, a herd of native animals developed biomechanical appendages, their movements becoming more precise and deliberate. They made their way to Nexus Point, now partially engulfed by the expanding Adaptoid structure. The Coalition had established a crisis management center, its walls pulsing with the same energy that permeated the landscape. Inside, they found Dr. Volkov coordinating with a team of frantic engineers. Screens displayed real-time data on the genetic shifts occurring across Genesis Prime. "The energy surge from the mating ritual triggered this," Dr. Volkov explained, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface. "We're seeing evolutionary leaps that should take millions of years happening in a matter of hours." Zara's towering form loomed over the assembled team, her eyes scanning the data with ancient wisdom. "We must act quickly to stabilize the process," she intoned. "I propose a network of energy regulators, utilizing our combined technologies." James nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. "I'll lead a team to construct the first regulator near the progenitor ruins. We'll need to work fast." As James assembled his team, Amethyst focused on the immediate needs of the Hirogen population. Many were experiencing rapid mutations, their bodies struggling to adapt to the influx of new genetic information. In a hastily assembled medical facility, Amethyst tended to a young Hirogen whose skin flickered with newfound bioluminescence. "Stay calm," she soothed, her own patterns pulsing in a calming rhythm. "Your body is adjusting. We're here to help." Meanwhile, James and his team arrived at the construction site for the first energy regulator. As they began to assemble the complex device, James noticed movement in the nearby foliage. A group of newly evolved plants had formed a semicircle around the worksite, their leaves swaying in a pattern that seemed almost intentional. "Hold on," James signaled to his team. He approached the plants, shrinking himself to better communicate with them. To his amazement, the plants responded to his presence, their movements becoming more pronounced. Using a combination of bioluminescent signals and subtle energy pulses, James established a rudimentary form of communication with the plants. He realized they were offering to assist in the construction, their evolved intelligence recognizing the importance of the task. "Incredible," James breathed, growing back to his normal size. "Team, we have some unexpected allies. Let's put them to work." As construction on the first regulator progressed, Amethyst received an urgent transmission from the Coalition leadership. A distant energy surge, previously identified as a point of interest, had sent a complex message encoded in energy pulses. "They're experiencing similar evolutionary leaps," Amethyst reported to James through their link. "They're requesting our help." The Coalition quickly convened, weighing their options. With the situation on Genesis Prime still volatile, they couldn't spare all their resources for an extended mission. After heated debate, a decision was reached. James would remain to oversee the stabilization efforts, while Amethyst would lead a diplomatic mission to the distant system. Before Amethyst's departure, she and James met in a specially constructed chamber interfacing directly with the Adaptoid hive mind. Their enhanced bodies intertwined, channeling the swirling energies around them. The ritual served a dual purpose: temporarily stabilizing the mutations on Genesis Prime and imbuing Amethyst with additional adaptive capabilities for her journey. As they separated, James cupped Amethyst's face in his hands. "Be safe out there," he said, his skin pulsing with a mix of love and concern. Amethyst nodded, her own patterns reflecting her dedication. "I'll bring back the knowledge we need. Together, we'll see this through." James watched as Amethyst boarded the Genesis Voyager, the ship's hull rippling and reconfiguring to match her enhanced physiology. As the vessel lifted off, James turned his attention back to the task at hand. With Zara's guidance, the team continued to construct and activate energy regulators across Genesis Prime. Each new regulator brought a measure of stability to the chaotic evolution around them. The expanding adaptoid structure began to slow its growth, and the rate of genetic mutations among the population gradually decreased. As James activated the final regulator, a surge of energy pulsed through the network. The adaptoid hive mind structure hummed with newfound power, generating a subspace signal that rippled out into the cosmos. Alarms blared in the Crisis Management Center. Dr. Volkov's voice cut through the chaos. Multiple unidentified vessels detected entering the outer reaches of our system. James's skin flashed with patterns of surprise and perseverance. The stabilization of Genesis Prime had been challenging enough. Now they faced the prospect of first contact with multiple unknown species, all while managing their own ongoing transformation. As he gazed out at the transformed landscape of Genesis Prime, James knew that the true test of their evolving civilization was just beginning. The next phase of their journey would require all the adaptability, intelligence, and cooperation they had gained. With Amethyst en route to seek help from distant allies and unknown vessels approaching their system, the stage was set for a new chapter in their cosmic adventure. As James contemplated the challenges ahead, a series of alarms blared throughout Nexus Point. The Coalition's defense system sprang to life, projecting a shimmering energy barrier around Genesis Prime. James's skin flickered with patterns of concentration as he interfaced with the adaptoid hive mind structure, channeling its power to reinforce the moon's defenses. "Status report," he commanded, his voice resonating through the Crisis Management Center. Dr. Volkov's fingers danced across holographic displays. "Multiple vessels entering the system. Origin unknown. No hostile actions detected yet, but they're on an intercept course." James nodded, his form shifting and growing to better interact with the complex network of energy regulators. As he connected with the system, he felt the pulse of Genesis Prime beneath him, a living, evolving entity in its own right. "I'm redirecting power from the hive mind to boost our shield," James announced, his voice echoing with the combined resonance of his enhanced physiology and the adaptoid structure. "Prepare for potential first contact scenarios." As the unidentified vessels drew closer, James's thoughts turned to Amethyst and her mission. He hoped she was faring better in her diplomatic efforts. Millions of light years away, the Genesis Voyager emerged from faster-than-light travel, its hull rippling with adaptive camouflage as it approached a planet wreathed in swirling, bioluminescent energy. Amethyst stood on the bridge, her skin pulsing with anticipation and caution. "Prepare landing party protocols," she ordered, her eyes fixed on the mesmerizing world below. "We don't know what to expect down there." The Genesis Voyager's landing craft descended through layers of shimmering atmosphere, touching down on a surface that seemed to breathe and shift beneath them. As Amethyst led her team out, they found themselves surrounded by towering structures that pulsed with familiar yet alien energy patterns. "It's like Genesis Prime," one of her crew members whispered, "but on a massive scale." Before Amethyst could respond, a group of beings emerged from the undulating landscape. Their bodies were elongated and fluid, shimmering with internal bioluminescence. Biomechanical components seamlessly integrated with their organic forms, creating an image of natural perfection. "Welcome, kindred spirits," one of the beings spoke, its voice a harmonious blend of organic tones and synthetic resonance. "We are the Cynthians, and we have much to share." As Amethyst engaged in diplomatic exchanges with the Cynthians, she learned of their accelerated evolution following an attempted replication of the Genesis Prime mating ritual. The parallels were striking, and Amethyst felt a surge of excitement at the potential knowledge they could gain. Back on Genesis Prime, James and Zara worked tirelessly to modify the energy regulator network. Their efforts paid off as they discovered a method to create controlled evolutionary zones across the moon's surface. "This is remarkable," Zara observed, her ancient eyes gleaming with newfound hope. "We can guide the adaptation process, allowing each species to evolve at a manageable rate." James nodded, his massive form shrinking down to better manipulate the delicate controls. "It's not just about control," he added. "It's about creating harmony between all the diverse life forms here." As they implemented the new system, James received an urgent communication from Amethyst. Her holographic form appeared before him, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "James, the Lumino-Cynthians have shared crucial information," she reported. "There's a network of dormant progenitor facilities throughout the galaxy. If we can activate them, we might be able to stabilize the evolutionary processes on multiple worlds." Before James could fully process this revelation, another alert sounded. The approaching vessels had made contact, identifying themselves as the Galactic Evolutionary Council. Their request to send a delegation to assess the situation added another layer of complexity to an already volatile scenario. After consulting with the coalition leadership, James agreed to receive the council delegation. He set about reconfiguring parts of Nexus Point, using his size-changing ability to create spaces that could accommodate a variety of physiologies. As James worked, he couldn't help but marvel at the rapid changes taking place around him. Plants and animals continued to evolve, developing new traits and abilities at an astonishing rate. The once barren landscape of Genesis Prime had become a vibrant tapestry of life, each species finding its niche in the new ecosystem. The arrival of the Galactic Evolutionary Council delegation marked a turning point. As their ship descended through the protective barrier, James stood ready to greet them, his form adapted to project both strength and diplomacy. 5 beings emerged, each as unique and extraordinary as the last. Their eyes widened as they took in the transformed landscape of Genesis Prime and the diversity of life forms that now called it home. "Incredible," one of the council members breathed, its multifaceted eyes reflecting the bioluminescent patterns that danced across the surface. "We've never seen integration on this scale before." As James led the delegation through Nexus Point, explaining the recent events and the coalition's efforts to manage the evolutionary crisis, he could sense their growing interest. When they requested a demonstration of the mating ritual that had triggered the evolutionary leap, James knew he couldn't refuse. "We can arrange that," he said, his skin flickering with a mix of caution and purpose. "But I must warn you, the effects can be unpredictable." Little did James know just how unpredictable things would become. As preparations for the demonstration ritual began, the Adaptoid hive mind structure began to shift and reform, creating a massive amphitheater around the ritual chamber. The event drew the attention of every being on Genesis Prime, with crowds gathering to witness what promised to be a momentous occasion. James entered the chamber along with representatives from the Lumini, Cynthian, and Adaptoid species. As the ritual began, energy swirled and pulsed around them, creating a dazzling display visible from every corner of the moon. What no one could have anticipated was the interaction between the ritual's energy and the council members' advanced technology. As the ceremony reached its climax, the council representatives began to change, their bodies rapidly adapting to more closely resemble the hybrid species of Genesis Prime. As the transformed council members emerged from the chamber, James knew they had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The implications for galactic diplomacy and the future of controlled evolution were staggering. Before he could fully address the situation, an urgent transmission from Amethyst cut through the chaos. Her voice was strained, tinged with a mix of awe and alarm. "James, we've activated one of the progenitor facilities," she reported, "but something's gone wrong. The evolutionary energy, it's spreading faster than we can control. Multiple star systems are at risk. We need help now." James's mind raced as he processed the cascade of events unfolding around him. The transformed council members, the potential of the progenitor facilities, And now the threat of uncontrolled evolution spreading across the galaxy, each challenge alone would be daunting. Together, they represented a crisis unlike anything they had faced before. As alarms blared and coalition members scrambled to respond, James knew that their next steps would shape the future, not just of Genesis Prime, but of countless worlds across the galaxy. The race to contain the spread of uncontrolled evolution had begun, and the fate of entire civilizations hung in the balance. Balance. The race to contain the spread of uncontrolled evolution had begun, and the fate of entire civilizations hung in the balance. James's skin pulsed with urgency as he turned to address the transformed council members. Their bodies shimmered and shifted, new appendages and sensory organs emerging and retracting in rapid succession. "We need to get you to medical immediately," James said, his voice resonating with authority. "Dr. Volkov, prepare the emergency quarantine protocols in Nexus Point." As the medical team rushed to assist the affected diplomats, James's form expanded, growing to an imposing height that allowed him to oversee the chaos unfolding around him. He interfaced directly with the Adaptoid hive mind, redirecting power to reinforce the protective barriers around Genesis Prime. "Zara," he called out, his voice carrying through the network of energy regulators. "We need to split our resources. I'm sending you to assist Amethyst with the progenitor facility crisis." Zara nodded, her ancient eyes gleaming with purpose. "I'll assemble a team immediately. We'll take the new hybrid vessel prototype." As Zara departed with her team, James turned his attention to the unaffected council members. Their expressions ranged from awe to thinly veiled fear as they watched their colleagues being escorted to the newly established quarantine zone. "Esteemed representatives," James began, his skin patterns projecting a mix of calm and urgency. "We must discuss the implications of what has transpired here and how we can work together to address this galactic crisis." The negotiations that followed were intense, with holographic displays flickering to life around them, showing real-time data on the spreading evolutionary wave. As they debated containment strategies and potential collaborative efforts, an alert from the Adaptoid hive mind drew James's attention. New tendrils of the structure were extending across Genesis Prime's surface, interfacing with buildings, energy grids, and even the plant life that had so rapidly evolved. James felt a surge of both excitement and apprehension as he sensed the expanding consciousness of the hive mind. "Dr. Volkov," he called out, his voice echoing through the facility, "I need a full analysis of the hive mind's expansion. We need to understand its impact on our inhabitants." Before Dr. Volkov could respond, another alarm blared through Nexus Point. James's skin flashed with patterns of alert as he accessed the Coalition's defensive systems. "Multiple vessels detected entering the system," he announced, his voice carrying a note of tension. "Energy signatures match those of the activated progenitor facility." The council members fell silent, their eyes fixed on James as he rapidly issued orders to the defense fleet. The Coalition's ships, now a hybrid of organic and technological components, moved into formation around Genesis Prime. "Incoming transmission," one of the communication officers reported. James nodded and a holographic image materialized before them. The being that appeared was barely recognizable, its form a swirling mass of energy and matter that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "We seek asylum," the being's voice resonated, a chorus of harmonics that sent shivers through those present. "Our worlds have been changed. We need your help." James exchanged glances with the council members before responding. "We will allow a limited number of your vessels to land. You must comply with our quarantine protocols." As the refugee ships began their descent, the Adaptoid hive mind structure pulsed with energy. James felt a surge of power coursing through him, and he watched in astonishment as the incoming vessels partially merged with Genesis Prime's surface upon landing. The refugees emerged, their bodies already showing signs of adaptation to the moon's unique environment. James mobilized the medical teams, his form shifting and stretching to assist in the creation of temporary housing units that could accommodate the diverse physiologies of the new arrivals. Amidst the chaos of managing the refugee crisis, James received an urgent transmission from Zara and Amethyst. Their holographic forms appeared before him, their expressions grave. James, we've contained the initial spread, Amethyst reported, her skin pulsing with a mix of relief and concern. But we've discovered something troubling. Zara nodded, her ancient eyes filled with worry. There's a network of interconnected progenitor outposts. If they all activate, it could trigger a galaxy-wide evolutionary event, James finished, his mind racing with the implications. As Zara and Amethyst detailed their findings and requested additional resources, James made a decision. He turned to the assembled coalition leadership and council members. We need to mount a large-scale expedition, he announced, his form growing to its full imposing height. I'll lead it myself. We'll investigate and deactivate these outposts before they can trigger a cascade effect. James initiated the construction of a new class of hybrid vessels designed to withstand the rigors of long-term space travel and capable of adapting to various evolutionary scenarios. As he oversaw the final stages of the fleet's assembly, he couldn't help but marvel at the sight. The ships, incorporating elements from all species present on Genesis Prime, were a testament to what they could achieve together. Each vessel pulsed with a combination of organic tissue and advanced technology, capable of adapting to unknown challenges they might face in the depths of space. As the last components were integrated into the flagship, James received word that the refugee integration process was proceeding smoothly. Many of the new arrivals were already contributing their unique skills and knowledge to the Coalition's efforts, their rapidly adapting bodies finding new ways to interact with Genesis Prime's evolving ecosystem. James stood on the bridge of the flagship, his skin rippling with anticipation as he prepared to embark on this galaxy-spanning mission. The fate of countless civilizations hung in the balance, and the challenges ahead were beyond anything they had faced before. As the fleet prepared for departure, James interfaced one last time with the Adaptoid hive mind, feeling the pulse of Genesis Prime beneath him. He knew that whatever they discovered out there in the vast expanse of space, they would face it together, adapting and evolving as one. The flagship's engines hummed to life, a harmonic resonance that seemed to echo the very essence of their hybrid existence. As they lifted off, James's gaze remained fixed on the stars ahead, ready to confront the unknown and shape the future of all species involved. As the Genesis Arcs prepared for their maiden voyage, an unexpected phenomenon seized the attention of every being on Genesis Prime. The Adaptoid hive mind structure, which had been steadily growing and evolving, began to shift and coalesce into a colossal, humanoid form. James watched in awe as the massive figure, composed of shimmering bioluminescent tendrils and intricate biomechanical components, rose from the surface of the moon. Its form was visible even from the bridge of the flagship, towering above the landscape and reaching towards the stars with outstretched arms. Incredible, James breathed, his skin rippling with patterns of wonder and anticipation. Before anyone could react further, the structure emitted a blinding pulse of energy that engulfed the entire Genesis system. James felt a sudden rush as his consciousness expanded, merging with every other being on Genesis Prime. In that instant, the collective knowledge and experiences of all species present flooded his mind. Images flashed before him, ancient progenitor civilizations, the birth of countless stars, the intricate dance of evolution across millennia. James saw the true purpose behind the recent changes, the activation of the outposts, and the rapid adaptations they had undergone. As the vision faded, James found himself transformed once again. His body now flowed effortlessly between various forms, incorporating aspects of all species involved in the Genesis Prime experiment. He looked down at his hands, watching in fascination as they shifted from Lumini light-based appendages to Cynthian precision tools and back to his original human form. "Dr. Volkov," James called out, his voice resonating with newfound depth. "Are you experiencing this as well?" The scientist nodded, his own form flickering between various states. "It appears we've achieved a level of adaptability beyond anything we could have imagined." James turned to address the assembled crew and diplomats, many of whom were still adjusting to their new forms. "The mission parameters have changed," he announced. "We are not meant to contain evolution, but to guide it. the progenitors intended for us to become shepherds of life across the galaxy. As if responding to their newfound purpose, the fleet of ships began to reconfigure themselves. The hybrid vessels expanded and reshaped, transforming into massive city-like structures capable of sustaining entire ecosystems. Genesis Arcs, Zara whispered, her ancient eyes wide with wonder as she watched the transformation unfold. James nodded, a smile playing across his features. Exactly. We'll use these to nurture and guide evolving species across the stars. As the crew prepared for their new mission, James sought out Amethyst. He found her standing in one of the observation domes, her form shifting subtly to match the swirling cosmic energies visible outside. Amethyst, James said softly, approaching her. She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. Without a word, they moved towards each other, their bodies intertwining in ways that defied traditional physical limitations. Their very cells seemed to merge and separate, exchanging genetic information in a dance of ultimate intimacy. As they parted, James felt a profound sense of connection, not just to Amethyst, but to all life in the galaxy. We've come so far, he murmured, his form rippling with emotion. From struggling to fit through doors to transcending physical form entirely, Amethyst agreed, her voice tinged with amusement and awe. The grand launch ceremony for the Genesis Arcs took place within the massive amphitheater formed by the Adaptoid structure. Representatives from all species gathered to bid farewell to the expedition, their diverse forms now united by the shared ability to adapt and change at will. James stood before the assembled crowd, his form growing to an impressive height to address the gathering. Today, we embark on a journey that will reshape the very fabric of life in our galaxy, he began, his voice carrying easily through the amphitheater. We go not as conquerors or controllers, but as guides and nurturers. Our mission is to share the gift of adaptation and to help all sentient life reach its full potential. As he spoke, James couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey that had led them to this point. What had begun as a simple challenge of accommodating physical differences had blossomed into something far greater, a united coalition of species working together to shepherd life itself. The ceremony reached its climax as the Genesis Arcs lifted off from the surface of Genesis Prime. The hybrid ships phased partially out of normal space-time, creating a breathtaking display of light and energy visible across the entire system. As they ascended, they left behind a network of bioluminescent energy corridors, paving the way for future exploration and cooperation. James stood at the helm of the lead arc, Amethyst by his side. As they prepared to make the jump to their first destination, he felt a surge of excitement and purpose. The challenges ahead were unknown, but with their newfound abilities and united purpose, James knew they were ready to face whatever the universe had in store for them. As the Genesis Arcs disappeared into the cosmic energy network, leaving behind a transformed Genesis Prime, James set his sights on the vast expanse of space before them. The journey to guide evolution across the stars had only just begun.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.